T-minus 10, 9, 8,
The clock is
7.
operating. We're underway.
Tranquility Base here.
Endeavor, go at throttle.
We've got coverage from Jonathan Mann at the convention site in Boston and from Richard Quest with the Kerry campaign in Florida. We begin with you, Jonathan, at Fleet Center.
Becky, as you say, we still have an hour to go before the convention gets underway. So right now I'm speaking to you from a big empty hall with an enormous hole to fill. People in the Kerry campaign say they have a strong candidate. They have $70 million in the bank. They are looking at a president that they think is very vulnerable, and their biggest problem is that many Americans say they still don't know enough about John Kerry to make up their minds about him. That having been said, there are some 5,000 delegates who are arriving here right now, making their way through heavy security to this convention center to come in and get a chance to see him firsthand, get a chance to hear speakers over the next 4 days recite his praises. Behind me, I think you can see perhaps Glenn Close, the American actress, is preparing her speech, but there will be all kinds of speeches over the next few days as the delegates gather and then formally nominate John Kerry on Thursday. Kerry himself is not here in Boston. He spent the day in Florida. He was at the Kennedy Space Center with former Ohio Senator John Glenn, an astronaut who knows that part of the world very well. John Glenn gave Kerry his enthusiastic endorsement, just one more Democrat lining up behind him in a party that feels really, really good about its candidate, a party that's known for division, that's known for open bickering, that's known for difficult and divisive conventions. No one is expecting one this time. Just an enormous show of support for John Kerry, and intriguingly enough, for a party that is really, really determined to get George Bush out of the White House, determined to put on a positive performance over the next 4 days. John Kerry has made it clear in no uncertain terms he doesn't want to see a negative convention. He doesn't want to see a lot of angry attacks on the sitting president. They want it to be positive. They want it to be forward-looking. They want this party to exhibit a sense of purpose and really encourage Americans that they have an alternative in John Kerry. So we'll be watching over the next 4 days. Becky?
Jonathan, give our viewers a sense of just how important this convention is to the Democrats.
Well, right now, if you look at the latest polls, this is a country that is really split. A lot of the polls nationwide say that the race is going to be too close to call. In a few really important swing states, that's certainly the case. And so this convention is viewed as an opportunity for John Kerry to really distinguish himself. As I was saying at the outset of our conversation, the biggest problem the Kerry people say they have is that Americans, they feel, don't know enough about their candidate. And in fact, polls reveal that John Kerry, a man who's often accused of being aloof and distant and failing to connect with voters, really hasn't encouraged Americans to feel that they understand him. So this convention is 4 days of uninterrupted advertising for John Kerry, probably the most helpful time that he'll have in the slightly less than 100 days that remain of this campaign. George Bush won't be here. He'll be keeping a very low profile, and this is where John Kerry has to seal the deal. This is where he has to make his big sell before the 3 months that remaining, when he'll be fighting one-on-one against George Bush and getting a lot of, probably continuing to get a lot of nasty attacks on his character.
Okay, well, the convention convenes in just under an hour's time. Of course, we'll be back to Jonathan at that point. Thank you. Of course, it was the Sunshine State that proved to be the pivotal vote in the last presidential election. John Kerry is in Florida, as is our Richard Quest, who joins us now with a southern perspective on the campaign so far. Richard.
A very good afternoon to you, Becky, from Ron John's surf shop here in Cocoa Beach in central Florida. I've decided it's time to loosen up a bit, to get into the Florida mentality. So it's the largest surf shop in the country. Surfboards, you name it, pretty much anything you could want. And as it relates to going to the beach, they've got it here. And it is appropriate that we are here in this part of the world at this time, because it was in Florida 4 years ago that electoral disaster, chaos and confusion arose. The locals are out and making a fuss. It's a picture-perfect weekend. If we want to discover what people are thinking, we head to the beach. Sometimes you've just got to do what you've just got to do to get the interview. Florida was where the White House was won 4 years ago, in an election infamous for those hanging chads. George Bush only became president after the US Supreme Court brought to a close a month of confusion in Florida.
Florida got a really bad rap with the hanging chads and things like that.
It was a disaster. It was a disaster.
If anything's going to go wacky, it's going to go wacky in America.
To find out how things have changed, I've joined the Fort Lauderdale Outrigger Canoe Club for an hour or two.
Cut!
Up.
Whoa! Right on.
I'm learning how to dig into the water and dig into politics. What do you think you've learned 4 years on about the whole way everything is run here?
Every vote counts, that's for sure. As close as it was.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of different demographics that go out this time around. A lot of the youth and more minority votes will probably happen this year for this election.
Not everybody's 100% happy on what's going on overseas, as well as the budget and what's happening to the general public and the average worker who's a blue-collar worker.
Most Americans we spoke to aren't embarrassed about what happened here 4 years ago. This time round, they know the race is close, but they don't think it'll happen again.
I think it was one of those rare things that happens where the popular vote is that close, and it was unfortunate what happened in Florida.
So, Becky, now I've got into the politics of it, I've just got to get into the surf culture. Maybe lose some of these threads and find something a little more appropriate.
Well, hang on until we get off air, Richard, perhaps. Our viewers may be fascinated to know that these democratic conventions, and indeed what happens now over the next 100 days, will be watched so closely at prime time, won't they, by so much of America.
Not as much as it used to be. It used to be gavel-to-gavel coverage. Now what the parties do, Becky, is they focus in on the big speeches. They want people to watch for a short period of time and get the message across. So tonight, in prime time, we have Bill Clinton, we have Hillary Clinton, we have Al Gore. Later in the week, we'll have John Edwards, we will have Kerry himself. But what they don't get is this gavel-to-gavel, this monster coverage that there used to be of the conventions. Much more targeted.
Interesting. OK, back to you in an hour or so, and one assumes you may have changed by that stage.
You never know.
Thank you, Richard.
100.000 bunte Luftballons warten darauf, auf die Delegierten niederzusinken. Aber das wird das Finale sein. Heute beginnt das Spektakel. Der Parteichef hat alles inspiziert, Delegierte und Gäste begrüßt. Michael Moore zum Beispiel, dessen Filmpolemik gegen Präsident Bush die politische Szene in Amerika mehr aufgeregt hat als der Wahlkampf bisher. Auf der Bühne wird geübt, hinter den Kulissen führt ein Heer von Werbeprofis, Meinungsforschern, Redenschreibern und Politstrategen Regie. Der Mann, um den es geht, war heute auf Werbetour in Florida. Senator Kerrys Kampagne wird bisher von der Hälfte aller befragten Wähler getragen, die Bush loswerden wollen, egal wie. Wofür er, Kerry, steht, warum er Präsident sein sollte, wer er ist, die Fragen warten noch auf Antwort. Das Bild des Kandidaten wird wesentlich von diesem Mann an seiner Seite mitbestimmt. Bob Schramm, 60 Jahre alt, Kerrys Chef-Kampagnenberater. Ein Mann mit langer Erfahrung als graue Eminenz hinter vielen der demokratischen Wahlkämpfer, an die im Foyer in Boston erinnert wird. Dass John Kerry im Frühjahr die Nominierung seiner Partei überhaupt errungen hat, hängt wohl nicht zufällig damit zusammen, dass Kerry damals den Publizistik- und Public-Relation-Profi Schramm in sein Lager holte. Bob Schramm begann in den 70er Jahren, doch seine Karriere hat allerdings einen entscheidenden Makel. Keiner seiner Klienten hat es bisher ins Weiße Haus geschafft. Von McGovern über Ted Kennedy, Dick Gephardt bis Al Gore, alle sind letzten Endes gescheitert. Die erfolgreichen Jimmy Carter und Bill Clinton verzichteten auf Schrams Dienste. Bob Schramm hat nun mit John Kerry wahrscheinlich zum letzten Mal die Chance, doch noch einmal einen präsidentiellen Sieger zu trainieren. Schramms politische Botschaft ist immer die gleiche: Der Kampf des normalen Amerika gegen die anonymen Kräfte, die alle Macht im Staat für sich beanspruchen. Ob ausgerechnet der aristokratische Senator aus der feinen Ostküstengesellschaft mit seinem aalglatten Rechtsanwaltspartner und dem ganzen reiche Leute-Milieu seiner Umgebung erfolgreich die populistische Politik des Bob Schramm vertreten kann, das ist die vielleicht entscheidende Frage dieses Wahlkampfs. Der Parteitag in Boston beginnt als Stimmungsfestival. 4 Tage bis zum großen Luftballonfinale.
Und genau da, wo die Luftballons noch in der Decke hängen, im Fleet Center in Boston, ist jetzt Eberhard Pilz. Bei ihm ist 4 Uhr nachmittags Ortszeit. Von uns aus guten Abend, Eberhard Pilz.
Ja, guten Abend. Hier geht's gerade los.
Ja, in dieser Minute, die sind also wenigstens mal mit dem Anfang des Parteitages pünktlich. Von uns aus, wenn man so die Umfragen liest, hat man das Gefühl, dass Kerry ziemlich sicher auf der Siegerstraße sei. Sieht man das in Amerika ähnlich?
Nein, das kann man so noch nicht sagen. In der letzten Zeit hat John Kerry die besseren Schlagzeilen gehabt. Das liegt hauptsächlich daran, dass der Präsident eben sehr schlechte Schlagzeilen hatte und John Kerry sich mit Meinungsäußerungen ziemlich zurückgehalten hat. Das heißt also, der Präsident hat eine schwache Phase und John Kerry wird nun in dieser Woche, wo die Demokraten alleine die Show beherrschen, natürlich weiterhin positive Schlagzeilen haben. Im Augenblick gerade wird der Parteitag eröffnet. Wir sind genau in dieser Sekunde dabei. Jetzt geht es los. 4 Tage lang werden die Demokraten die Show, die politische Show in Amerika für sich alleine haben.
Bei uns beherrscht der Irakkrieg immer noch die Berichterstattung über die Wahlen auch in den USA. Ist das in Amerika ähnlich?
Zweifellos, der Irak-Konflikt überschattet die Nachrichtenlage total. Und der Irak-Konflikt wird sicher auch das Thema sein, das im Wahlkampf letzten Endes eine entscheidende Rolle spielen wird. Der Präsident ist täglich damit beschäftigt und der Präsidentschaftskandidat John Kerry ist in seinen Aussagen bisher ziemlich vorsichtig, ziemlich zurückhaltend gewesen. Wir werden mal sehen, was er hier auf dem Parteitag bei seiner großen Rede zu diesem brennenden Konflikt zu sagen hat.
Das ist ja überhaupt das Problem. Bei Bush weiß man inzwischen, woran man ist. Und bei Kerry ist das Bild noch ein bisschen verschwommen, oder nicht?
Ja, zweifellos. Auch viele Amerikaner wissen ja immer noch nicht so recht, was sie von diesem Kandidaten zu halten haben. John Kerry neigt dazu, in einer Art politischem Opportunismus gerne das zu sagen, was das Publikum gerne hören möchte oder was er glaubt, dass das Publikum gerne hören möchte. Und dabei bleibt es natürlich schwierig, eine Kontur bei ihm zu erkennen. Also auch da muss man abwarten, ob es ihm gelingt, jetzt deutlicher zu machen, wer er wirklich ist, wofür er steht und warum er letzten Endes Präsident der Vereinigten Staaten werden will.
Eine unfaire Frage an den Korrespondenten. Trotzdem die Bitte um eine Antwort. Wenn Sie jetzt $1 setzen müssten auf Bush oder Kerry, auf wen würden Sie heute setzen?
Also aus heutiger Sicht der Dinge würde ich noch immer auf den amtierenden Präsidenten setzen.
Eine Aussage fürs Protokoll. Danke, Eberhard Pilz.
Which cost the Democrats, you could say, the election 4 years ago when Al Gore lost a very closely contested race there, and the Democrats badly want to regain this time. John Kerry won't be here for another 4 days, but in the hours to come, we'll be hearing from both living former Democratic presidents, Jimmy Carter, the oldest living Democrat to have occupied the White House, Hillary Rodham Clinton, a woman who some say would like to occupy the White House, and then the keynote speaker coming up in 6 hours from now, if the Democrats remain on schedule, Bill Clinton, a very, very popular figure, and with his wife, Hillary Rodham Clinton, 2 figures who some people think may overshadow John Kerry himself. So John Kerry is, for the time being, taking a back seat to the events that are underway, showing up from time to time as he did by surprise in Boston and doing some campaigning as he did today in Florida. But right now the convention is underway, 5,000 people here who are going to be doing a lot of talking about John Kerry before officially handing over the floor to him, and then on Thursday, the nomination for the presidency. Becky?
All right, well, lots of time to come. We look forward to it. We're going to leave it there with John. We thank you. US Senator and former First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton is not disguising how she feels about the current administration.
I am so excited about replacing this administration. You know, I think that the Bush-Cheney presidency has been bad for America and bad for the world. I cannot wait to see them leave the White House. The sooner the better. I wish we could move the inauguration up a few months.
Ganze Politspektakel da in Boston auf ihn zugespitzt und abgestimmt. Es wird ein riesiges Spektakel inszeniert. Es kommen Vietnam-Veteranen, die John Kerry huldigen werden. Seine Familie wird das Loblied auf ihn singen. Dann werden 100.000 Luftballons da hochgehen und 500 Kilo Konfetti werden auf ihm niederregnen. Das Ganze ist für europäische Geschmäcker wahrscheinlich schon ein bisschen peinlich, aber die Amerikaner, die mögen das eben. Nach unserer Zeit, 22 Uhr, ging es gestern Abend also los und der eigentliche Star der Veranstaltung, John Kerry, der war noch gar nicht da. Der kommt nämlich erst morgen. Dafür würde die ganze andere demokratische Politprominenz aufgefahren. Der Ex-Präsident Jimmy Carter sprach und eben, und das war das eigentliche Highlight, das Ehepaar Clinton war da.
Es war der erwartet große Auftritt. Angekündigt von seiner Frau Hillary Clinton, Senatorin in New York, betrat Bill Clinton die Bühne. Warum die Clintons als Stars der Demokratischen Partei gelten, zeigte sich schnell. Die Parteibasis tobte vor Begeisterung. Zum ersten Mal, während Amerika einen Krieg führte, hat die Regierung 2 große Steuersenkungen durchgeführt, von der fast die Hälfte dem reichsten Prozent der Amerikaner zugute kamen. Ich gehöre dieser Gruppe an, zum ersten Mal in meinem Leben. Vielleicht erinnert ihr euch, als ich im Amt war, waren die Republikaner gelegentlich gemein zu mir. Aber als ich aus dem Amt ging und viel Geld verdient habe, gehörte ich plötzlich für sie zur wichtigsten Gruppe der Welt. Ich hätte mir nie träumen lassen, dass der Präsident so gut für mich sorgen würde. Bill Clintons ironischer Angriff auf die Regierung Bush ist noch nicht zu Ende. Erst wollte ich Ihnen ein Dankschreiben für meine Steuererleichterung schicken. Aber dann begriff ich, dass sie euch dafür die Rechnung aufbrummen. Und dann wusste ich es besser. Zuvor hatte Al Gore, Vizepräsident unter Clinton und Gegenkandidat von George Bush bei der Wahl 2000, die Außenpolitik der Regierung attackiert. Wären wir nicht besser dran, fragte er, mit einem neuen Präsidenten, der nicht alle Brücken zu unseren Verbündeten verbrannt hätte? Und der in der Lage ist, den Respekt für Amerika in der Welt wiederherzustellen? Auch für Ex-Präsident Jimmy Carter gefährdet der Irakkrieg die Identität Amerikas.
Our dominant international challenge is to restore the greatness of America.
Heute ist unsere größte Herausforderung, die Größe Amerikas wiederherzustellen.
Based on telling the truth,
indem wir die Wahrheit sagen, für den Frieden eintreten, die Bürgerrechte achten, zu Hause und in der Welt. Kerry for President riefen tausende Demokraten zum Auftakt ihres Parteitags. Am ersten Tag der Convention in Boston präsentierten sich die Demokraten einig wie selten zuvor. Der Grund, der gemeinsame politische Gegner, George Bush.
Nominating convention in Boston. Rob Franken reports on the opening night.
A reminder, Democrats, your nominee will be John Kerry. Try and remember, it's not Bill Clinton. He was just there to help Kerry.
After 3 conventions as a candidate or a president, tonight I come to you as a citizen, returning to the role that I have played for most of my life, as a foot soldier in our fight for the future, as we nominate in Boston a true New England patriot for president.
He's the former president, of course, but that other Clinton was there too, with all the talk of her trying to become a future president. But that's for another night.
We need a new commander-in-chief named John Kerry. I've been saying for many months now, John Kerry is a serious man for a serious job in a serious time in our country's history.
The Democrats have done something very unusual this year. They've stopped bickering, united in the common cause of beating George W. Bush, cheering again for the man they feel beat him last time.
The first lesson is this. Take it from me.
every vote counts.
The tedious, massive security outside did nothing to dampen the Democrats' enthusiasm inside the Fleet Center. And tonight, the pep rally continues. Tonight, Howard Dean speaks once again of the fight against President Bush.
Bob Franken there reporting from Boston.
The Democratic presidential candidate spent Monday in Florida, a state predicted to be a battleground. He was accompanied by a U.S. senator who's also a living legend. Frank Buckley has the story.
There is no better place to launch something than right here at Cape Canaveral.
As his party's convention kicked off in Boston, Senator John Kerry was at Cape Canaveral, Florida, enlisting former Senator and spaceman John Glenn in his quest to stress positive and American themes. As his Democratic Party prepared to nominate him for president, Kerry issued a challenge to independents and even Republicans to consider voting for him.
Stop and think about what's happening in America. As John said a moment ago, if you're a conservative, there is nothing conservative about piling debt on the shoulders of our children and driving the deficits up as far as the eye can see.
Senator Kerry and President Bush are locked in battle over Florida, which went to Bush in the 2000 election of the Chads by a mere 537 votes. A new CNN USA Today Gallup poll suggests President Bush has a 3-point lead here now, but it's within the margin of error. Other polls also indicate a dead heat. It could still go either way.
I believe that I can run a war that's more thoughtful, more effective, that I know how to make America safer than we are today.
Much could ride on Senator Kerry's speech on Thursday, when undecided voters in Florida and elsewhere may tune into the political season for their first close examination of John Kerry. Kerry has a shot at defining himself to them on his own terms. Aides tell us Senator Kerry is still making adjustments to his acceptance speech, but in broad terms, they say it's less about criticizing the incumbent, President Bush, and more about John Kerry and what he wants to do for the country if elected. Frank Buckley, CNN, Norfolk, Virginia.
This is your world today.
The United Nations cabinet reshuffle. We expect to have a press conference.
Humanitarian groups. No official comments.
The focus on the future, with an eye on the party's past glories. The Democratic National Convention continues in Boston on Tuesday. Former presidential candidate Howard Dean, Senator Edward Kennedy, Teresa Heinz, Kerry, all going to be offering a personal view of the party's presidential candidate, John Kerry, Tuesday night.
The party's pep rally opened up its 4-day run on Monday with a spirited call to action by former President Bill Clinton. Jonathan Mann reports now from Boston.
The 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
It was heavy hitter night in Boston. Former President Bill Clinton, still loved by the party after all these years, gave Monday night's keynote address. He urged Americans to rally behind Kerry's upbeat message.
They believe the role of government is to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of those who embrace their economic, political, and social views, leaving ordinary citizens to fend for themselves on important matters like health care and retirement security. Now, since most Americans aren't that far to the right, our friends have to portray us Democrats as simply unacceptable, lacking in strength and values. In other words, they need a divided America, but we don't.
The Kerry camp had called for no Bush bashing, but former President Jimmy Carter, who's known more for his post-presidency than for what he did during his White House years, made several stinging rebukes to the current administration's policies.
You can't be a war president one day and claim to be a peace president the next, depending on the latest political polls. When our national security requires military action, John Kerry has already proven in Vietnam that he will not hesitate to act. And as a proven defender of our national security, John Kerry will strengthen the global alliance against terrorism while avoiding unnecessary wars.
Former Vice President Al Gore, who won the popular vote in 2000, urged Democrats not to forget the Florida fiasco 4 years ago.
The first lesson is this. Take it from me. Every vote counts. In our democracy, every vote has power. And never forget that power is yours. Don't let anyone take it away from you or talk you into throwing it away. And let's make sure that this time every vote is counted. Let's make sure that the Supreme Court does not pick the next president, and that this president is not the one who picks the next Supreme Court.
Gore also managed to slip in a jab at Bush.
Regardless of your opinion at the beginning of this war, isn't it now abundantly obvious that the way this war has been managed by the administration has gotten us into very serious trouble? Wouldn't we be better off with a new president who hasn't burned his bridges to our allies and who can rebuild respect for America in the world?
Jonathan Mann, CNN, Boston.
Joining us now live from the convention site in Boston is CNN's Bob Franken. Bob, Clinton still showing he can rally the troops.
He could probably get the nomination if he was allowed to by the U.S. Constitution, but that, of course, is not the case, and there is a real fear, as a matter of fact, among those who are pushing John Kerry's candidacy, that Bill Clinton could possibly overshadow him. One of the explanations for why Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Al Gore spoke on Monday night and that John Kerry is speaking on Thursday night, a bit of a worry that he would have been overshadowed had the present candidate spoken more close to the former president.
Every one of those speeches, though, we heard yesterday, Bob, vetted very carefully, weren't they, by the Kerry campaign?
Yes, it's not that there are not going to be some negative comments about the incumbent president, George W. Bush, but the Democrats are very concerned that they might look too harsh. So the Democratic National Committee has won the right to go over these with a fine-tooth comb to try and set a proper tone. We're told that the only one that was not edited was the speech made by former President Jimmy Carter.
CNN's Bob Franken reporting to us from Boston. Thanks, Bob. Jim?
Well, the focus of all that attention, of course, is one man, John Kerry, the senator who is now campaigning. He is not at the convention quite yet, doing his job, so to speak, while everyone is rallying back in Boston. He is now in Norfolk, Virginia. Let's listen what his message is to the voters here.
But this is bigger than just those issues, and you know that. What's brought you here, all of you, what's got people standing in the openings of a garage and on top of the buildings and back in a park, what's brought you all here is our common hopes as Americans. The fact that we know that we can do better. We can do better in America. We deserve to put in place the values that actually make a difference to Americans, not talk about them. Talk is cheap. Values are not the words of politics. Values are the choices that you make. Values are the fights that you choose to fight to make life better for other people. Values are the things you do to put in place the dreams of our country that lift all Americans up and make life better for everybody, not just for the wealthiest people in our country. John Edwards and I value jobs that don't require you to go to work and earn so much less than the job that was shipped overseas. We value jobs where when you go to work for a week, you can actually pay your bills and you can live and you can do better and you can put money away for college and buy a home and take a vacation. We believe it's a value that you put in practice, that you make certain that Americans aren't asked out of their hardworking tax money, that their money is taken and actually used to reward a company that takes your job overseas. When John and I are there, when I'm president, Never again will any American subsidize the loss of their own job. We're going to end that nonsense. Let me tell you another value. How often do you hear and see these politicians who wind up going into schools, they do a nice photo opportunity with the kids, and they leave the school, and the school doesn't have enough money for teachers in order to have a lower class size. The school doesn't have enough money for after-school programs. I think it's a value to make certain that all of our children are safe in the afternoons. I think it's a value to make sure that we stop spending $50,000 a year to house someone in prison for the rest of their life, rather than put $10,000 into Head Start, Early Start, Smart Start, early childhood education.
We've been listening there to John Kerry, Norfolk, Virginia, obviously talking to a crowd of his supporters as he carries forward the message. It is the same message he has been repeating in the run-up to this Democratic National Convention. That message is, we can do better. Now, as he presents that message, it is a general message by its very nature. The voters are going to be asking, how do you make it better? And this is the question that John Kerry and the Democrats haven't answered yet. You hear a lot of talk as he was going on there about what doesn't work, talking about the schools, talking about the export of jobs, talking about the other problems that do concern Americans. Now, he says, we will make it work. This is the value that we have. We will make it work. But what John Kerry doesn't answer there is how he is going to make it work. These are some of the specifics that the party's going to have to get to after the convention. John Kerry very much sees that this is going to be a fight. It's all reflected in the convention overnight when you heard the calls from Al Gore about how every vote counts. The Democrats know this is a very, very close race, and Kerry is going to have to fight it all of the way. There are many ways he can do it. One of them is by being out here on the stump. But he's also got to have the answers to the questions. He can't just say, we're going to do better. He's got to say how the Democrats are going to do better. Perhaps one of the bigger challenges that the Democrats face now after their convention. All right, we're going to move on, but we'll be talking with some of our political analysts about those topics, about the campaign and how it's all affected in the minutes ahead. Stay with us.
Hallo Deutschland, Bilder wie aus einem schlimmen Krimi. Der Mann droht zu ertrinken, denn der Killerwal versucht seinen eigenen Trainer immer wieder unter Wasser zu drücken. So geschehen jetzt in den Vereinigten Staaten, genauer gesagt in Welt in San Antonio. Kai heißt der Killerwal, der jetzt offenbar einen Aussetzer hatte, und Steve Abel, der Trainer, wenn man diese Bilder sieht, der offenbar vermutlich sehr viel Glück hatte.
Die Show ist kurz vor ihrem Ende, als der Killerwal beginnt, seinen Trainer zu attackieren. Das Tier schmeißt sich auf Steve Abel, der Mühe hat, Luft zu bekommen, denn immer wieder versucht der Wal, ihn unter die Wasseroberfläche zu drücken. Kurzzeitig sieht es so aus, als könne Abel fliehen, doch es gibt kein Entkommen. Der Wal ist schneller und lässt nicht von Abel ab. Im amerikanischen Fernsehen berichten Augenzeugen von dem Vorfall.
Mir war zunächst gar nicht klar, dass etwas verkehrt lief. Mein Sohn Justin sagte mir, hey, da stimmt etwas nicht. Zu der Zeit versuchte die Crew von SeaWorld, die Zuschauer vom Geschehen im Pool abzulenken.
Dem Ertrinken nahe gelingt Steve Abel dann nach mehreren Minuten endlich die Flucht aus dem Becken. Er entkommt dem Orca unverletzt. Letztlich konnte der Trainer auf den Rücken des Tieres und auf die Rampe springen, wo ein anderer Trainer ihm half. Der Wal machte einen letzten Versuch und schmiss sich mit seinem ganzen Gewicht auf die Rampe, so weit und so hoch er nur konnte. Seit mehr als 10 Jahren arbeitet Abel mit Kai. Warum der Schwertwal jetzt auf seinen Trainer losging, kann auch der erfahrene Meeresbiologe nicht beantworten. Steve Abel, der beinahe von Kai umgebracht worden wäre, will weiter mit ihm arbeiten. Die Show mit Kai, dem Killerwal, soll in den nächsten Tagen weitergehen.
Die Show läuft, alles scheint normal. Doch dann wirft sich Killerwal Kai plötzlich zur Seite. Das tonnenschwere Tier drückt seinen Coach unter Wasser und schwimmt sich dann erst richtig in Rage. Eine Attacke jagt die nächste. Kaum ist der Mann aufgetaucht, nimmt der Wal wieder Anlauf. Die Zuschauer glauben zunächst an eine besonders gewagte Shownummer. Doch auch Familie Licurious versteht bald, dass das kein Spaß mehr ist. Einmal kam er eine ganze Zeit lang nicht mehr hoch. Das war wirklich beängstigend. Der erste Rettungsversuch misslingt. Kai stößt seinen Trainer ins Wasser zurück. Steve Abel arbeitet seit 17 Jahren mit Tieren. Seit 10 ist er der Coach des Killerwals. Doch der scheint ihn nun ernsthaft verletzen zu wollen. Aus dem Augenwinkel sah ich die anderen Trainer. Sie klatschten aufs Wasser und bliesen in ihre Trillerpfeifen. Ich filmte alles und sagte den Kindern, haltet euch die Augen zu. Im Publikum ist es inzwischen totenstill. Die Zuschauer befürchten das Schlimmste. Und dann kommt doch noch Rettung, wie Licurious im US-Fernsehen schildert. Irgendwann war der Wal zwischen Rampe und Trainer und dann sprang der Trainer auf den Walrücken und ein anderer riss ihn an Land. Der Wal war ziemlich aufgeregt, dass sein Coach nicht mehr im Pool war. Die Show wird sofort abgebrochen, doch Steve Abel ist tatsächlich unverletzt. Die Zuschauer applaudieren, als es ihm gelingt, Kai zu beruhigen. Abel vermutet, dass sein Killerwal gerade ins gebärfähige Alter kam und sich deshalb vom Trainer bedroht fühlte.
Nicht enden wollender Jubel und Tränen der Begeisterung. Doch der Star auf dem Parteitag der Demokraten in Boston war nicht Präsidentschaftskandidat John Kerry.
Please welcome the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton.
Mit viel Pathos schwor Bill Clinton die Anhänger auf den Präsidentschaftskandidaten John Kerry ein. Wir sitzen doch alle in einem Boot. Deshalb müssen wir dem Kapitän unseres Schiffes helfen, einem tapferen Mann, der weiß, wie man ein Schiff durch schwere See lenkt, das Schiff in ruhigeres Gewässer zu führen, zu noch mehr Geschlossenheit. Mit seiner Rede stahl Clinton John Kerry die Show. Der Auftritt des charismatischen Ex-Präsidenten stand im scharfen Gegensatz zu dem eher hölzern und spröde wirkenden Kerry. Der Senator aus Massachusetts, der zurzeit noch durch die USA tourt, hat es bisher nicht geschafft, die Herzen der Amerikaner zu erobern. Kerry steht unter Druck. Er muss den Amerikanern beweisen, dass er Führungsqualitäten hat. Denn in diesem Punkt liegt US-Präsident George W. Bush in Umfragen noch weit vorn. Scharfe Kritik gab es auf dem Parteitag vor allem für Bushs Außenpolitik. Ex-Präsident Jimmy Carter machte Bush verantwortlich für den massiven Ansehensverlust der USA in der Welt. Man kann nicht an einem Tag ein Kriegspräsident sein und am nächsten Tag ein Friedenspräsident sein wollen, je nachdem, wie die Meinungsumfragen gerade sind. US-Kommentatoren sehen John Kerry vor einer übermenschlichen Aufgabe. Denn bis zu den Wahlen im November muss er bei den Amerikanern noch viele Sympathiepunkte sammeln.
Die Bühne für den Herausforderer von US-Präsident Bush ist bereitet. Doch nicht John Kerry drückte dem ersten Tag des Parteitags der US-Demokraten seinen Stempel auf. Es war vielmehr Ex-Präsident Bill Clinton, der zusammen mit seiner Frau Hillary die Delegierten in Freudentaumel versetzte. Aus Boston berichtet unser Korrespondent Volker Albers.
Es war der Abend der Clintons. Die Halle zum ersten Mal brechend voll. Zu groß ist die Sehnsucht der Demokraten nach überlebensgroßen Führungspersönlichkeiten. Hillary Clinton, selbst schon als zukünftige Kandidatin gehandelt, durfte ihren Mann und damit den Star des Abends ankündigen. Begrüßen Sie mit mir den 42. Präsidenten der Vereinigten Staaten. Und dann kam er, der Messias der Demokraten, und tat, was er hier tun muss. Er versuchte, John Kerry ein Profil zu geben. Damals in Vietnam haben sich viele junge Männer, zum Beispiel der jetzige Präsident, sein Vize und auch ich, vor dem Kriegsdienst gedrückt. John Kerry aus privilegierten Verhältnissen hätte das auch tun können, doch er sagte, schickt mich. Geradezu frenetisch wurde Clinton gefeiert. Hat er doch alles, was sich Demokraten wünschen und bei Kerry vermissen. Und genau da liegt das Problem.
Auf diesem Parteitag wird nichts dem Zufall überlassen. Und so hat es natürlich auch einen Grund, dass Bill Clinton schon so früh spricht. Schließlich ist der Mann sehr beliebt und sehr charismatisch. Und da hat man wohl Angst, dass er John Kerry überstrahlen könnte. Deshalb sein Auftritt gleich zu Beginn. Und danach wird er auch sofort wieder abreisen. Der offizielle Höhepunkt dieser Convention wird John Kerrys Rede am Donnerstagabend sein. Der inoffizielle Höhepunkt aber war, ohne Zweifel, bereits der Auftritt der Clintons.
Es war Clinton-Nacht in Boston und der Parteitag jubelte.
Hillary, die Zukunftshoffnung für viele Demokraten, präsentiert Bill und der Ex-Präsident zeigt einmal mehr, dass er das überragende politische Talent ist. Präsident Bush führt das Land in die falsche Richtung, sagt er, deswegen braucht Amerika eine neue Führung. Weil wir alle in einem Boot sitzen, sollten wir einen zum Kapitän machen, der Mut hat und weiß, wie man durch stürmische See steuert. Das soll unsere Botschaft an Amerika sein. Lasst John Kerry ran. Die alte Clinton-Magie funktioniert wie eh und je. Die Delegierten feiern den Mann und die Erinnerung an bessere Zeiten für ihre Partei. Wehmut verbreitet Al Gore, der Verlierer, Nostalgie Altpräsident Jimmy Carter. Hollywood-Star Glenn Close präsentiert die neuen weiblichen Senatorinnen der Demokratischen Partei und den ganzen Tag lang halten sich alle an die Marschrichtung, die die Parteitagsregie ausgegeben hat. Nicht schwarzmalen, positiv denken, Optimismus verbreiten. Ob Clinton sein Feuerwerk zündet oder Vietnam-Veteranen den Heldenmut von John Kerry preisen, der Parteitag hat nur ein Ziel: den Kandidaten zum Superstar aufbauen. Das wirkt manchmal übertrieben oder auch gekünstelt, aber es erzeugt einen gewaltigen Erwartungsdruck. John Kerry wird es nicht leicht haben, übermorgen bei seiner Rede hier dem gerecht zu werden.
Der Senator erhielt fast alle der mehr als 4000 Delegiertenstimmen. Er wird erst zum Abschluss des Parteitages vor den Delegierten sprechen. Vor der Abstimmung hatte der Kandidat für das Amt des Vizepräsidenten Edwards für Kerry geworben. In seiner Rede rief er die US-Bürger zu einem Kurswechsel auf.
Edwards kam unter stürmischem Jubel auf die Bühne. Seine Frau Elizabeth und eine seiner Töchter hatten ihn den Delegierten und Gästen des Parteitages angekündigt. Seine halbstündige Rede wurde immer wieder von Beifall unterbrochen. Die Politik von US-Präsident Bush bezeichnete er als alt, hasserfüllt und negativ. John Kerry dagegen sei ein Symbol für Hoffnung. Gemeinsam würden sie entschlossen gegen Terrorismus vorgehen. An die Adresse von Al-Qaida gerichtet, sagte Edwards: Ihr könnt euch nicht verstecken und nicht entkommen. Wir werden euch zerstören.
Democratic presidential nominee John Kerry is preparing his acceptance speech to be given today at the party convention in Boston. He arrived in the city on Wednesday. Let's get more now from our convention anchor, Jonathan Mann, reporting from Boston.
Wednesday began with a photo opportunity set against the backdrop of Boston Harbor and a trip across the harbor in a water taxi, a boat trip intended by campaign organizers to bring to mind another time, another place, and another boat. John Kerry was a decorated naval officer for his duty in the swift boats of Vietnam, small craft that were sent into enemy territory to draw fire and engage the Viet Cong in combat. John Kerry was decorated with 3 Purple Hearts for wounds he suffered in that duty, a Bronze Star and a Silver Star for valor. Every moment of the day that news organizations showed this videotape was an opportunity for journalists and for the audience to be reminded that John Kerry was a war hero. It's a message the Kerry campaign can't put forward enough, and yet in some parts of Boston especially, it's not enough. John Kerry has represented Boston as the Massachusetts senator for some time, but support is not universal. Dan Lothian has a look at that.
Senator John Kerry's recent appearance at Fenway Park was greeted with both cheers and jeers. The feelings of this hometown crowd shared in the streets.
I think he's honest, and I think he's moral, and I believe what he says.
We don't know where he actually stands, and that could be confusing for the voters.
Even in Kerry's upscale Beacon Hill neighborhood, where there is some pride in a potential president down the block, there is division.
There are people who are 100% behind him. There are people who don't support him.
This is the picture the Kerry campaign has been selling to the nation. But in Massachusetts, the state he's represented for 2 decades, a more complex portrait.
I think we know him as well as we're going to know him.
The typical Massachusetts politician is a backslapper, and Senator Kerry has always been a chin scratcher. While Senator Kennedy orates in public. Senator Kerry has deliberated in public.
Over the years, that has led some critics here to label him as detached, uninterested in details of the state, more focused on the national stage. Then there is the lingering issue of charisma.
When he goes out there, he gives a speech, it's like...
But experts say Senator Kerry's successful political career in the state shows he has been able to win over the voters, even some of those who don't naturally warm up to him. How has he done it?
They vote for him because he batters down the opposition. He beats the other guy. I mean, he is a fighter. And Kerry is not afraid to pull the trigger.
Senator Kerry remains a popular political figure here in the state. A recent survey conducted puts his favorability rating at 59%, unfavorable 30%. Dan Lothian, CNN, Boston.
At its best, the Democratic National Convention is like a family gathering. Everyone's doing their best to be polite, put their best face forward, and not criticize anybody too closely. But there are real families who are at work here. Kelly Wallace has a look at the Democratic families that are leading this convention, and in particular, at the Democratic daughters.
Daughters helping daughters on how to cope when your dad's job changes from senator to member of the Democratic ticket.
It can be both an incredible privilege and also a bit of a roller coaster ride.
And so Corinna and Kristen Gore hosted a brunch for women who are now in their shoes. Vanessa and Alex Carey.
Not sure that Vanessa and I would have such strong voices if they hadn't sort of paved that path.
And Kate Edwards.
Obviously, they've been through this a number of times, so they've been such a great resource for us, and they've reached out to us, and it's fantastic.
Tip number one, get ready for life as you know it to change.
It's amazing how quickly things change, and all of a sudden the Secret Service or your 10th grade dance.
And of course, don't forget to pace yourself.
Because it can be very draining when every time you leave your room, there's a camera on you.
So you're getting used to all these cameras?
This is definitely a very new experience.
After all, not every 20-something gets to meet and become friends with Ben Affleck and has to prepare a speech that will be seen on national television.
Yesterday, I was on the rug. I was in the prep room on the floor, sort of writing, and I felt like I was in 8th grade again. Yeah, sort of, no, that doesn't sound right.
Maybe this final piece of advice from women who've done what they're about to do will help.
Just to keep doing what they're doing, to be themselves, you know, because they're so amazing and they're so good at connecting with people.
And in fact, we will be hearing from John Kerry's daughters, Vanessa and Alex, here in Boston on the final night of the convention Thursday, as John Kerry accepts the nomination for the presidency. Jonathan Mann, CNN, at the Democratic National Convention in Boston.
Generalprobe für den Kandidaten. Vor gut einer Stunde durfte John Kerry schon einmal die Bühne betreten, auf der er heute Nacht die bislang wichtigste Rede seiner politischen Laufbahn halten wird. Sein Vize John Edwards hat seinen großen Auftritt bereits absolviert. Der jugendlich und dynamisch wirkende Sunnyboy aus dem Süden, der sich aus einfachen Verhältnissen hochgearbeitet hat, will sich für ein sozial gerechteres Amerika einsetzen, ein Land, das nicht länger gespalten ist. Es gibt noch immer zwei Amerikas, das der Reichen, die den amerikanischen Traum leben, und das der meisten Amerikaner, die hart arbeiten und trotzdem jeden Tag kämpfen müssen. Im außenpolitischen Teil seiner Rede kündigte er einen entschlossenen Kampf gegen Terroristen an. Er kritisierte Präsident Bush für seine müde, alte und von Hass erfüllte negative Politik. Sie müsse durch eine Politik der Hoffnung ersetzt werden. Wenn ihr mit euren Kindern sprecht, die die Freiheit im Irak verteidigen, dann sagt ihnen, Hoffnung ist unterwegs. Mit seiner Rede hat Edwards die Vorfreude der Demokraten auf den erhofften Machtwechsel angeheizt. Jetzt warten alle mit Spannung auf den Kandidaten John Kerry.
Guten Morgen, meine Damen und Herren. In den USA hat die heiße Phase des Präsidentschaftswahlkampfes begonnen. John Kerry ist jetzt auch formell Herausforderer von Amtsinhaber Bush. Als Höhepunkt des Parteitags der Demokraten in Boston akzeptierte Kerry in der Nacht die Nominierung zum Präsidentschaftskandidaten. In einer kämpferischen Rede warb er um Vertrauen im In- und Ausland.
Unter dem Jubel von etwa 20.000 Delegierten und geladenen Gästen versprach Kerry den Amerikanern stets die Wahrheit zu sagen und die USA niemals unnötig in einen Krieg zu führen. Der Kandidat der Demokraten kündigte an, als Präsident die Vertrauenswürdigkeit und Glaubwürdigkeit der US-Regierung in der Welt wiederherzustellen. Die USA sollten bewundert und nicht nur gefürchtet werden, so Kerry wörtlich. Zugleich präsentierte sich der als zögerlich geltende 60-Jährige als entschlossener Kämpfer für die Sicherheit der USA. Er werde Gewalt einsetzen, wenn es erforderlich sei. Mit seiner Rede und einer bunten Abschlussfeier ging am späten Abend der viertägige Parteitag der Demokraten in Boston zu Ende.
Mit der Annahme seiner Wahl zum Präsidentschaftskandidat beginnt für John Kerry nun die heiße Phase im Kampf ums Weiße Haus. 4 Tage lang mussten die Delegierten warten auf den Hauptdarsteller, wenngleich nicht sie, sondern 20 Millionen Amerikaner vor den Fernsehgeräten, die eigentlichen Empfänger seiner Botschaft waren. Wer ist John Kerry? Eine Frage, die sich halb Amerika noch immer stellt. Vor allem sei er einer, so die Antwort der Parteitagschoreografen, der im Vietnamkrieg gekämpft hat und dessen ehemalige Kriegskameraden nun 30 Jahre nach Vietnam nach Boston gekommen sind, um Amerika zu versichern: Der tapfere Kämpfer aus dem Vietnamkrieg ist der bessere Präsident und der fähigere Mann, Amerika zu beschützen. Nicht, dass es wahr ist. Zu sagen, man könne einen billigen Antiterrorkrieg führen, bedeutet nicht, dass es wahr ist. Und zu sagen, Mission im Irak erfüllt, heißt auch nicht, dass es wahr ist. Wie George Bush vor 4 Jahren versprach nun Kerry, die Glaubwürdigkeit des Weißen Hauses wiederherzustellen. Wenn nötig, aber niemals unter Irreführung des Volkes in den Krieg zu führen. Als Präsident werde ich die Einigkeit der Nation wiederherstellen und ich verspreche, diese Nation wird niemals in den Krieg ziehen, weil sie es will, sondern nur, wenn sie es muss. In dem langen Teil zur nationalen Sicherheit versprach Kerry für den Fall seiner Wahl eine Reform der Geheimdienste und eine Aufstockung der Streitkräfte. Details zu seinen Plänen für den Irak blieb er hingegen schuldig. Hieß die goldene Wahlkampfregel in den früheren Jahren noch, es ist die Wirtschaft, die entscheidet, spielte Innenpolitik in Kerrys Rede kaum eine Rolle. Wie gut Kerrys Rede und der gesamte Parteitag nun waren, entscheiden einzig und allein die Wähler. Mit Spannung werden die ersten Umfragen erwartet. Über den Erfolg des Parteitages entscheiden die Meinungsforscher.
Mit einer neuen Außenpolitik will der Präsidentschaftskandidat der US-Demokraten Kerry die Wähler für sich gewinnen. In seiner Rede zum Abschluss des Parteitags der Demokraten in Boston kritisierte er die Irak-Politik der Regierung Bush und versprach, das Vertrauen des Auslands in die USA wiederherzustellen. Er wolle, dass die Welt die USA bewundere und nicht fürchte.
Sichtlich entspannt nahm Kerry heute Morgen von Boston Abschied. Es war gleichzeitig der Beginn einer ausgedehnten Wahlkampfreise von der Ost- bis zur Westküste. Fast 6.000 Kilometer werden Kerry und Edwards dafür in den nächsten Wochen zurücklegen. Zuvor hatte Kerry den Parteitag mit einer Rede beendet, die allzu negative Töne vermied. Kritik an Präsident Bush äußerte er deutlich, aber indirekt, verpackt in seine positive Grundbotschaft. Wir haben es in der Hand, die Welt zu verändern, aber nur, wenn wir unseren Idealen treu bleiben. Und das heißt zuallererst, dem amerikanischen Volk immer die Wahrheit zu sagen. Als Präsident werde ich Vertrauen und Glaubwürdigkeit im Weißen Haus wiederherstellen. Kerry bemühte sich in der Verteidigungspolitik nicht als weicher Liberaler dazustehen. Er betonte seinen Militärdienst im Vietnamkrieg und dass auch er die Armee notfalls ohne UNO-Mandat einsetzen würde. Allerdings mit einer Einschränkung. Amerika darf nie in den Krieg ziehen, weil es will, sondern nur, wenn es unbedingt muss. Die Botschaft dieses Parteitages sollte lauten, Bush und Cheney handeln mit Furcht, Kerry und Edwards mit Hoffnung. Seine Partei hat John Kerry geschlossen hinter sich. So geschlossen, dass er sich nun ganz weit in die politische Mitte bewegt. Dorthin, wo er schwankenden Bush-Wählern die Hand reichen kann. Um sie zu sich hinüberzuziehen, dämpft er seine Kritik am Präsidenten und gibt sich so, wie Amerika es erwartet. Optimistisch und patriotisch.
schlafen gelegt, als sein Herausforderer John Kerry in Boston vor den Kameras der TV-Stationen seine bisher größte Wahlkampfrede hielt. Darin kam Bush erwartungsgemäß nicht gut weg. Vor allem seine Irak-Politik stellte Kerry an den Pranger. Er will als Präsident das Ansehen der USA in der Welt wiederherstellen. Aber auch in den USA selbst haben sich viele Defizite angestaut. So musste das Präsidialamt heute von einem Rekordminus im Haushalt berichten. Das beträgt 445 Milliarden $.
Anderthalb Jahre im Wahlkampf, 20 Jahre im US-Senat, ein Mann mit politischer Erfahrung und doch, das hier ist sein wichtigster Tag. John Forbes Kerry, demokratischer Präsidentschaftskandidat, Einsatz im Vietnamkrieg damals, Umarmungen mit den Kameraden von einst heute. Ein salutierender Parteisoldat meldet sich zum Dienst für die Vereinigten Staaten von Amerika.
I'm John Kerry and I'm reporting for duty.
Krieg, Terror, innere Sicherheit, das sind die amerikanischen Themen, mit denen Kerry und sein Vize Edwards punkten und US-Präsident Bush schlagen wollen. Keine Präventivkriege, Reform des Geheimdienstes, Ausbau des Militärs. All das ganz oben auf Kerrys Agenda, gepaart mit dem Versprechen, sein Land und sein Volk verteidigen zu wollen, aber nur, wenn es nötig ist. Als Präsident werde ich die Einigkeit der Nation wiederherstellen, sagt Kerry, und ich verspreche, diese Nation wird niemals in den Krieg ziehen, weil sie es will, sondern nur, wenn sie es muss. In Sachen Innenpolitik bleibt Kerry oberflächlich. Alternative Energiequellen will er fördern, die Stammzellenforschung vorantreiben. Er fordert höhere Steuern für die Reichen und Entlastungen für die Mittelklasse. Und dann zum Schluss die Generalattacke auf seinen Herausforderer. Es ist Zeit, nach dem nächsten Traum zu greifen, sagt Kerry in Anspielung auf Martin Luther King. Zeit, zu neuen Horizonten aufzubrechen. Unsere besten Tage liegen noch vor uns.
Thank you, good night, God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Die demokratische Wahlkampfmunition erst einmal verschossen. Und pünktlich zum Großreinemachen in Boston hat nun US-Präsident Bush die heiße Phase seines Wahlkampfes eingeläutet.
Unser USA-Korrespondent Christian Wilp hat sich die Rede von John Kerry auf dem Wahlparteitag in Boston mit angehört. Hier sein Resümee.
Die Boston-Kerry-Party ist vorüber, jetzt wird Bilanz gezogen. Der Senator aus Massachusetts, kein rhetorisches Naturtalent wie Bill Clinton, hat für seine Verhältnisse eine sehr, sehr gute Rede gehalten. Sie war patriotisch, teils pathetisch, aber immer staatsmännisch. Die Menschen in der Halle jedenfalls waren begeistert. Entscheidend allerdings sind die vielen Unentschlossenen daheim an den Fernsehschirmen.
For the first time in 30 years, NASA is sending a spacecraft to Mercury. Its 7-year journey will take it past Venus and on to orbit the closest planet to the Sun. The messenger will try to find out about the forces that shaped the tiny, dense planet, 2/3 of which is believed to be made up of iron metal. These huge protective cases will protect the spacecraft and its sensitive instruments from the extreme heat and pressure from liftoff. Like Earth, Mercury was formed in the dense gas and dust cloud at the formation of the Sun. But despite appearances, some believe it was once much like our own planet. Like Earth, but unlike Venus or Mars, it has its own magnetic field and perhaps water. While its proximity to the Sun roasts Mercury's equator to 900 degrees Fahrenheit, craters at the planet's south pole are permanently in darkness. It's at the poles where scientists hope to find ice and the answers to questions of how our solar system began.
We have the intriguing hypothesis that the planet with the most extreme variation in temperature at the equator might have water ice or other volatiles lurking at the poles. Messenger is going after that question. We'll try to answer the question of what lies in those polar craters.
Now the scientists will be hoping for fine weather for Monday's launch. Thunderstorms off the southeast American coast could push back the countdown, but most expect the mission to begin at some point next week. Dan Simmons, BBC News.
Begin get the kind of performance out of it?
Yep, not bad. Money in the bank. Horizontal gaps in between, that means that's a gold flash metallization. So the reflection kind of becomes different.
You watch the boards, Neil's watching the blanket.
US-Weltraumbahnhof in Cape Canaveral im Bundesstaat Florida. Das hat nicht geklappt wegen eines Hurricanes, der sich näherte. Jetzt will es die NASA nochmal versuchen. Die Leitung steht hoffentlich nach Cape Canaveral noch nicht. Aber doch, jetzt der Blick, meine Damen und Herren, der spannende Blick. Es ist immer wieder spannend auf so eine Rakete, die in wenigen Minuten abheben soll. Wir gehen natürlich live nach Cape Canaveral, sind dabei, wenn eine Merkursonde auf den Weg, auf ihren 7-jährigen Weg ins All gebracht werden soll. Und werfen zuvor noch einen Blick aufs Wetter. Heute in der Westhälfte sowie im Süden ist es freundlich, später aber wärmebedingt einzelne Schauer und Gewitter. Bis 33 Grad werden es dort. Richtung Nordosten nehmen die Wolken dann zu. Dabei örtlich auch Schauer und Gewitter und ja etwas kälter, nur 22 bis 25 Grad.
It is now a hurricane, the whole system now pushing up towards the northeast. As I say, it's close enough to land that it could cause some problems, but it's not going to make landfall, so we'll keep a very close eye on this and bring you the latest on that. And talking of the latest, we're now literally just 2 to 3 minutes away from the launch. Here, of course, we're watching the launch pad of NASA's Messenger spacecraft, and the launch is due to take place at any moment. We are going to take a short break here on CNN Today. When we return, we'll bring you those pictures live.
This is Delta Launch Control at T-minus 70 minutes, 43 seconds and counting. And here in the Mission Director Center with us is Ted Hartka. He's the lead mechanical systems engineer for the Messenger spacecraft, and he's been with it since it arrived here in Florida. And Ted, that was about how long ago?
The spacecraft arrived March 10th.
So this has been several months for you. And we have a tape, if we can roll that now. Ted, tell us what we're seeing in the video as we go through the whole flow.
As we said, the spacecraft arrived at Astrotech Space Operations on March 10th. The spacecraft was double bagged to protect it from contamination. You can see here we're removing that bag. In order to save time, the spacecraft was moved directly into the hazardous facility at Astrotech, where fueling and spin balance operations can take place. Here we're putting the spacecraft on a turnover fixture designed by GenCorp Aerojet that was designed to allow us to gain access to all parts of the spacecraft with 2 axes of rotation. You can see here in the photograph the spacecraft can be turned around, and in the upcoming views the spacecraft, the whole assembly can then be rotated. You can see here the spacecraft being rotated for propulsion testing of the spacecraft. The fixture was originally designed to be used by Aerojet in order to do all the welding of all the propulsion plumbing involved on the spacecraft. Here, mid-March, we then had a delay in the launch, and we had to move the spacecraft from the hazardous facility to another payload processing facility due to some scheduled facility upgrades. And so here we're rebagging the spacecraft for the transportation between buildings at Astrotech. We again double bag the spacecraft to protect it from contamination during the move. And here you can see us moving between the 2 facilities, the 2 buildings at Astrotech. What you see here are the 2 gentlemen moving in the dewar on the spacecraft. That dewar provides nitrogen, which purges the instruments to keep them clean. And then here we are again, removing the bag which covered the spacecraft during the move. We spent about 80 days in the payload processing facility during the delay, and we determined that the best place to keep the spacecraft was on a spacecraft stand during that operation. That gave us good flexibility around the spacecraft, and we could continue doing the operations necessary. So this is the spacecraft as it stood for a while. Here are the solar arrays. The solar arrays are 1/3 mirrors and 2/3 cells. The solar arrays are, in these photographs, are being inspected and cleaned. You can see there the mirrors are used to keep the cells cool in the mercury environment. And here we are testing the solar arrays to make sure they survive the trip down I-95. Here, Neil Bechtel, the lead spacecraft mechanic, is installing thermal blankets. These blankets protect the spacecraft while in orbit around the planet. And now we're installing those solar arrays you just saw onto the spacecraft. You see here the mechanical team using a crane to install one of the 2 solar array wings. You see that it's quite cramped in there. And then here they are manually supporting the spacecraft or the panel while it's on the crane. The panels are held on with a single bolt, and here is a release of that panel for the deployment testing we did, again in a similar fashion to testing electrically testing the solar arrays to mechanically show that the mechanisms survived the trip here. And of course, for the fueling operations, we had to then go back to the hazardous processing facility. So an awful lot of our pictures here are bagging and unbagging of the spacecraft, again just to protect everything from contamination. There were many handling operations you see here, lifting the spacecraft out of the base of the container we used to transport it between the facilities. And then again, in a similar fashion to the processing facility, we place the spacecraft again down on the spacecraft stand for the fueling, for the propellant loading operations. These gentlemen are wearing SCAPE suits. SCAPE is self-contained atmospheric protection ensemble suits due to the hazardous fuel and oxidizer that are in the spacecraft. After fueling was completed and the spacecraft was basically in full flight configuration, the spacecraft was moved to the spin balance table in the hazardous processing facility. The third stage of the Delta is a spin stabilized third stage, and so the spacecraft also needs to be spin balanced in order to allow the third stage to operate correctly. And you can see here the spacecraft, with the exception of a few protective covers to keep dirt out of the large thruster on the top and some of the star trackers on the top, is in full flight configuration. You see the solar arrays with the mirrors and the cells, and all the thermal blankets are installed. After spin balance, the spacecraft is mated to the third stage in the hazardous facility, and then it is canned up in this container for the trip from Astrotech, the 22 miles from Astrotech to the pad. The trip to the pad was conducted overnight. This is normal operation. This is done for a couple of reasons. One, the temperatures are lower, the weather is normally better, and we have less traffic issues late at night. We left around midnight and we got to the pad about 4:30 in the morning.
That shot, what we're seeing right there, we just saw the...
You saw the LOX venting out of the LOX vent, and they're just conditioning the tanks now to receive the cold LOX, and so they're blowing out the LOX out of there, not allowing it to build up pressure, and slowly but surely we'll start getting liquid LOX into there.
We have some video now of the Delta vehicle being erected out on the pad, so if we could roll that now, and Omar, tell us what we're seeing as we go along.
Sure, this is the first stage of the Delta booster. It has our main engine and our two verniers. It's a unique way of putting up this booster is we hang it up in the mobile service tower and slowly roll the mobile service tower over to the launch mount. The first stage is what carries our 9 solid rocket motors. It's got our main engine, which you see there with the red bell cover on it, and 2 small vernier engines. The main engine controls our thrust and our pitch and yaw, in other words, our steering, and the vernier engines control our roll motion, and that's how we get control of the rocket. This is a shot of the rocket as it's being rolled over onto the launch mount. It'll be lowered, and the next scene is that of the GEM 46s being hung into the mobile service tower.
And the GEMs are what?
The GEMs are the graphite epoxy motors. It's the solid rocket motors we strap to the side of the Delta booster. There's 9 of them. We ignite 6 of them at liftoff. 70 seconds or 75 seconds later, we ignite the other 3 as we jettison the first 6 that lit up. These are the GEM 46s, which are larger than what we normally use on the standard Delta. This is a Delta II Heavy. This is 6 inches wider in diameter. What you're seeing now is the second stage of the Delta going up, and this is the nozzle and the helium and nitrogen bottles. That nozzle there is made out of material called columbium. It's an exotic material that's used to take the heat of the hypergolic mixture that's going through this, and by hypergolic I mean we're using Aerozine 50 and nitrogen tetroxide, and we have a hypergolic mix when you combine those 2 chemicals. This is it going up into the tower, and then we'll transition over. The people you see watching this going up are watching to make sure we don't hit the second stage on any of the platforms or the stuff that protrudes, or that we don't get any wind gusts that could possibly move the second stage as it's being lifted. It's a combined team of Boeing, Air Force, NASA, and various other subcontractors that are working here. So you see quite a bit of activity and folks monitoring and documentation taking place. This is as it's lowered into the inner stage, which is a stage that's already been put up there on top of the first stage of the solid. It's just a cylindrical section where the second stage will be lowered onto. This is all then bolted together and ready for its checkout. You'll notice that there's no need for different garments or anything. There's nothing that's dangerous at this point or can cause any harm, so you'll see a change coming up in the garments that are worn due to the dangerous nature of the fuels that are loaded on the spacecraft, which is coming up here in this section. This is the spacecraft in its can. The can is what we transport the spacecraft from its processing facility to the launch pad. It's a protective metal container, and we'll hoist that up into the MST and into the white room. We call it a white room because it has cleaner conditions. And you'll notice that the folks here are now wearing flame retardant garments or clean garments, and that's to protect them in case of a fuel spill of some kind from the spacecraft or a fire, because the spacecraft at this point is loaded with propellants.
Everybody happy?
This is the can being taken off of the spacecraft, and you'll see that inside that protective metal can, the spacecraft is actually bagged, and that's a secondary protective measure to protect the spacecraft. That bag will be taken off after we put this shield around the spacecraft, which we call the shower curtain, and that's what's being erected now.
And that's primarily?
That's to protect it from, as we transition this can and other lifting hoist away from the MST or the white room is exposed at that point. We want to protect the spacecraft as much as we can until we get conditions in that clean room back to a pristine condition. And we can't do that with the doors wide open, and that's why we have this shower curtain. This is the fairings. It's a 9.5-foot aluminum fairing, and we're bringing it up close and encapsulating the spacecraft. Put one section on, put the other section, bolt it together, and take the strong backs off, which is the yellow lifting fixtures you see around it. The dark material you see inside of the fairing is acoustic blanketing to keep the noise levels down inside the fairing and protect the spacecraft from acoustic environments that it'll see during the launch and liftoff phase. And it's also a thermal barrier, which will keep the spacecraft nice and cool as it's rising through the hot atmosphere.
Hydraulics go. 30 seconds.
T-minus 20 seconds. We're still go, entering the terminal phase, 15 seconds. LOX topping now, underway. Green board, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Main engine start, 2, 1, and 0, and liftoff of Messenger on NASA's mission to Mercury, a planetary enigma in our inner solar system. Pitch program is in, roll program is in. Control rates all look normal. Steering looks good. Now going through the sound barrier. Now going through the period of maximum dynamic pressure. Acquisition now at Jupiter Inlet. Engines reporting burning well, solids reported burning well. Going Going now to telemetry engineer Steve Agate.
60 seconds.
We'll have symmetrical burn on the 6 ground-lit solids. They'll be burning out shortly. Chamber pressures on those 6 ground-lit solids are trailing off. Air-lit solids are now on, and the ground-lit solids have jettisoned. 6 ground-lit solids are off, 3 air-lit solids are burning, increasing in chamber pressure. Burn is symmetrical. Abnormal disturbances at the solid motor jettison point. All first stage systems look good.
And sequencers, Chief Launch Conductor on 1, report liftoff time.
Solid motors still giving us symmetrical burn.
15:56.
Engine verniers continue also to look good.
And I'm sorry, repeat one more time, sequencer.
06:15:56.537.
Okay, chamber pressure is decreasing on the air-lit solids.
537, thank you.
And the air-lit solids have jettisoned. The 3 air-lit solids are now separated from the vehicle.
Altitude now about 36 nautical miles.
This is a CNN Live event.
You're watching CNN Live from London. We welcome viewers joining us across Asia. We're going to take you live to Cape Canaveral in Florida. NASA is going to try for the second time to launch a mission to Mercury in just about 25 seconds time. Now, a probe called the Messenger is sitting on top of what you've just been looking at, a Boeing Delta II rocket at the Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. There it is again. You just saw the controllers as they prepare for the launch. Let's go to NASA and hear the commentator just a few seconds away.
Main engine start,
from
2,
the launch.
1, and 0, and liftoff of Messenger on NASA's mission to Mercury, a planetary enigma in our inner solar system. Pitch program is in, roll program is in. Control rates all look normal. Steering looks good.
Now that looks like a successful launch.
Now going through the sound barrier.
Expert, but that looks to me like the Messenger mission is now on its way to Mercury. NASA's first attempt to get there in something like 30 years. It's going to take 7 years to get there, a very large distance to be covered. Something like 50 billion miles, I read the probe will travel on its way there. Can't go in a straight line or else it wouldn't be able to stop before it hit the sun. Let us bring in an expert in this subject who knows rather more about it than me. Paul Murdin is with the Institute of Astronomy at Cambridge University, and thanks for being here. Tell us a bit about why it's so important that Messenger should make it to Mercury.
Well, if you think about all the planets all stretched out in a row from the closest to the sun to the furthest away, then Earth is about third in the line. And Mercury, in its properties and in its position, sort of brackets the Earth on one side. So if you want to understand the history of the Earth, and you want to understand why it's like it is, and also where it's going to go in its evolution, then looking at Mercury for some of the exaggerated properties which are caused by how close it is to the sun is a good idea.
It's a bit of a depressing picture, isn't it, if Mercury holds the future for Earth? I mean, what's the average temperature on the hot side?
Well, it's warm enough so that electronic equipment would melt on the hot side, and the spacecraft has to be specially wrapped up in insulation to stop it doing just that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not that we will get to be like Mercury. It's just that its properties are sort of an exaggerated form of what is going to happen to the Earth.
So give us an idea of some of the distances that are involved here. I mean, the Earth, I remember, is 93 million miles from the sun, and Mercury something like 36 million. But you know, you're talking about a much longer distance that the Messenger has to travel, aren't you?
You are, because you can't just sort of plunge down there and stop. You said in the introduction that you'd overshoot and you would go into the sun. So Messenger has got to do a quite complicated trajectory around some of the other planets. gradually giving up some of its speed and doing a sort of braking mechanism as it gets to Mercury.
And then, when it gets there, what do we want to know? I mean, it's already been photographed, hasn't it? Something like 30 years ago by the original mission. 45% of the planet's surface was photographed. What do we want to find this time?
Well, it was only photographed. I mean, that was virtually all that happened to it. And as you're right, roughly half the surface was mapped out. So this probe has got sensing devices on it of the 21st century that will measure the composition of the surface and how the surface, as it were, all dried out and boiled away with the heat of the sun during the formation period of the planet. It'll measure how the atmosphere of Mercury, a very, very thin, tenuous atmosphere, how that formed. And it will also measure some of the ways in which Mercury acts inside the atmosphere of the sun and interacts with it.
In George Bush's plans for space travel, he's talked about missions to Mars, and people have talked about exploiting the potential of Mars, and even talked in semi-realistic terms about people going there, despite the huge distances involved. Where Mercury is concerned, is it a rather different picture because of the extreme climate? I mean, could anybody ever contemplate going there and surviving?
I'd never say never, but I would say that certainly not in our lifetime. I mean, this is such a hostile environment. I don't think anybody's going to go there, and the resources there are minimal. I think what we will get out of Mercury by going with this spacecraft there is intellectual capital. It'll make us think differently about the way in which the planets work, and it'll help us understand the Earth better.
OK, so rather long pause before we can go ahead with the next round of questions, which is, was the mission a success? Something like 7 years, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
7 years
But it's a good start on in the launch. I mean, there's not a rocket that takes off, but that the engineers aren't holding their fingers crossed.
Today it went well. OK, Paul Murdin, many thanks, with the Institute of Astronomy at Cambridge University.
30 Jahren ist soeben wieder eine Expedition zum Planeten Merkur gestartet. Die Sonde Messenger der US-Raumfahrtbehörde NASA hob vor wenigen Minuten vom Raumfahrtzentrum Cape Canaveral ab. Die Trägerrakete mit der Sonde ist jetzt auf dem Weg ins All. Fast 7 Jahre soll die Reise zum bisher kaum erforschten Merkur dauern. Von der Mission erhoffen sich die Wissenschaftler neue Informationen über den Planeten und die Entstehung unseres Sonnensystems.
Nach dem fehlgeschlagenen Start gestern hat die NASA nun heute erfolgreich die Raumsonde Messenger in Richtung Merkur geschickt. 8 Milliarden Kilometer lang ist die Strecke zu dem Planeten, der der Sonne am nächsten ist. Heute Morgen brachte eine Delta-Trägerrakete die Sonde Messenger ins All. Fast 7 Jahre lang wird sie unterwegs sein. Die NASA will neue Erkenntnisse über die Oberfläche des Merkur gewinnen und über mögliche Eisvorkommen an seinen Polen.
Der gelegene Planet zur Sonne. Er ist 91 Millionen Kilometer von der Erde entfernt. Zur Erkundung des Planeten startete die Weltraumbehörde NASA heute Morgen eine Mission erfolgreich, die auf mehrere Jahre angesetzt ist.
Genau 30 Jahre nach dem ersten Versuch schickte sie wieder eine Sonde zum Merkur. Die Messenger hob am frühen Morgen von Cape Canaveral im US-Bundesstaat Florida ab. Sie soll die Oberfläche, die Atmosphäre und die geologische Geschichte des Merkur erkunden. Die Wissenschaftler erhoffen sich davon mehr Wissen über andere erdähnliche Planeten. Bis die Sonde den Merkur erreicht, dauert es allerdings. Voraussichtlich im März 2011 soll sie auf die Umlaufbahn des Merkur einschwenken und den Planeten dann ein Jahr umrunden.
30 Jahre nach dem ersten Versuch hat die US-Weltraumbehörde NASA wieder eine Sonde zum Merkur geschickt. Am frühen Morgen hob die Messenger von Cape Canaveral im US-Bundesstaat Florida ab. Sie soll die Oberfläche, die Atmosphäre und die geologische Geschichte des Merkur erkunden. Die Wissenschaftler erhoffen sich davon auch Erkenntnisse über andere erdähnliche Planeten. Voraussichtlich im März 2011 soll die Sonde auf die Umlaufbahn des Merkur einschwenken und den Planeten dann ein Jahr umrunden.
Good evening and welcome to the International Space Station Flight Control Room. Here, U.S. flight controllers are preparing to monitor U.S. systems and the activities of the Expedition 9 crew as they step outside of the International Space Station for the third spacewalk of this mission. The spacewalk is being choreographed by the flight controllers in the Russian Mission Control Center just outside of Moscow in Korolev. Currently, they are monitoring the activities of the crew as they are inside the Piers docking compartment and airlock in their spacesuits and going through final suit checks of their spacesuits and stabilizing the pressure of the docking compartment.
Can wake it up.
The two spacewalkers donned their spacesuits about 30 minutes ago. Astronaut Mike Fink will be wearing the Russian Orlan suit with blue stripes, and cosmonaut Gennady Padalka, seen here on the right, will be wearing the Russian spacesuit with the red stripes.
Five minutes. 598 decimal.
Tonight's spacewalk is scheduled to get underway at 2:10 a.m. Central Time with hatch opening of the Piers docking compartment and airlock. That about an hour and 8 minutes away from now.
Okay, we'll move on. Fragment 5.
Можно переходить к фрагменту 5.
Yes, you can move on to fragment 5.
Принято. Шаговый.
Copy. Okay.
Давление баллона доложи нам.
Tonight, the Expedition 9 crew will work on the outside of the Zvezda service module while wearing their Russian Orlan spacesuits. They will replace several materials, exposure experiment packages, and a thruster contamination monitoring unit, and also will install reflectors and communications equipment that is needed for the docking of a new European Space Agency cargo ship that's called the Automated Transfer Vehicle that is set to fly to the space station for the first time next year.
385. And the fourth one, 320. 320. Okay, copy, 320. Copy. Okay, we'll start the purge. And timer. Okay, copy. 5 minutes.
Время начала деструации.
Okay.
Время начала деструации в 6:04.
Okay, the pre-breathe at 6:04. Depress at 6:04. Okay, copy.
While we're monitoring activities here in Mission Control Houston, over at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, flight controllers or launch control is in the final hold for the launch of the Messenger spacecraft. They're scheduled to pick up the count in a few minutes at 1:12 a.m. Central Time, with the launch scheduled at 1:15 a.m. Central Time. Coverage of that is on another transponder for tonight. If you'd like to see the coverage of the Messenger launch, you can tune in to AMC 6 transponder 5. The AMC 6 satellite is located at 73 degrees west longitude.
Two minutes up.
The International Space Station currently orbiting at an average altitude of about 224 statute miles, as the crew members on board are inside the docking compartment preparing for their spacewalk tonight. This will be the 5th spacewalk for Gennady Padalka and the 3rd for astronaut Mike Fink. 55th spacewalk in support of space station assembly and maintenance, and the 30th from the station itself, and the 12th spacewalk from the Russian Pirs airlock.
604. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. Flight controllers at the Russian flight control room monitoring the systems in the Russian Pirs docking compartment and coordinating activities with the crew members inside the docking compartment. They're inside their pressurized spacesuit and have depressurized the docking compartment in the first step of the two-step fashion depressurization. Crew members also working to complete a pre-breathe procedure to purge nitrogen from their blood system to prevent them from getting a condition called the bends, which is a condition experienced by deep sea divers as well.
Okay, good. Okay, shall we move on? Okay, you can start. Continue on with step 9. Okay.
The crew members are continuing through the procedures to fully depressurize the Pirs docking compartment and airlock. It started out at a 14.5 psi, or pounds per square inch, and is now at about 10.64 in this first stage of depressurization. They continue on with some leak checks of the hatches between the docking compartment and the service module. And we'll follow along with the procedures to complete the depressurization of the airlock. Right now the crew is running ahead of schedule, about 20 minutes, as reported by EVA Officer Paul Bain here in the U.S. Flight Control Room, who is in communication with his counterparts at the Russian Flight Control Room.
2 minutes for equalization.
Overseeing activities here in the U.S. Flight Control Room is Flight Director John Curry, seen in the top right corner of your screen. Speaking with the crew if necessary from the U.S. side is Capcom and astronaut Greg Shamatov. And seated to his right is astronaut Rick Linehan to provide any assistance if necessary.
Yeah, make it up. Worst minute is worst minute is going 6:19. Okay. Copy. 6:19.
This is Mission Control Houston with an update of the Messenger launch. It's been confirmed that the first stage has separated from the vehicle and it's operating on the second stage now, making its way to orbit. In these views, you can see the Piers docking compartment and airlock that the Expedition 9 crew members will be stepping outside of tonight.
Four minutes.
These views are being provided by various cameras on the exterior of the space station, in particular ones located on the Canadarm2 or space station robotic arm. You can see in the lower half of the picture the edge of the robotic arm as this camera is looking past to the tip end effector. There are also cameras located at the elbow of the robotic arm, and a camera on the starboard one lower outboard truss segment will be providing some views of tonight's spacewalk as well. Those cameras are being operated by the Communication and Tracking Officer here in Mission Control Houston.
5 minutes. The pressure is 619. Copy, Genna. Okay, excellent. Okay, now we move on to fragment 6. Okay. Fragment 6. Can't make it up.
This view is looking back with the Piers docking compartment in the foreground and then the Zvezda service module behind it. It will be the primary work site for the spacewalkers tonight. The spacewalkers will move immediately after exiting the Piers airlock to the aft end cone of Zvezda. There they will find a wide open workspace since the Progress 14 vehicle undocked on Friday.
Так. Есть пристыковалка лодки.
Okay. The umbilicals are
Так, фрагменты я сделал.
okay, it's done now.
Крышку лурка закрыл?
Did you put the
Посмотри, у меня закрыт.
cover on? Did you install the storage cap? Yes. Can you look at mine? Yes. Okay. We are about to start the hatch opening. Is it okay? Okay. Vladimir Soroka is going to talk to you, and he'll give you a go to the hatch opening.
Gena Michael, добрый день.
Gena Mike, good day. Hi, Vladimir.
Очень добрый.
It's a very good day.
Открываем, да?
Okay, do we have a go, Vladimir?
Давление высокое, какое, ребята, еще раз скажите.
What is the pressure in the DC one? Could you please give it to me one more time? 15.5 millimeters.
Принято.
Copy.
Готовится и начинать открывать.
Okay, you can prepare, get ready, and start the hatch opening. Okay, please check the safety tethers on the Orlands. Okay.
Ключ открытия люка. Положение рабочее.
You have to put the key in the working position, and
this
you
is
can
Mission
start the
Control
rotation.
Houston. The
Okay,
Expedition
we
9 crew has the go to open the hatch of the Piers docking compartment and airlock. We'll stand by for the official word on opening of the hatch and the start of tonight's spacewalk.
Opening. It's open now. Okay, the pressure will go up a little bit now. Let me check. Actually, the pressure is decreasing. You have to pull on this handle, Mike. Pull this handle, Mike. Okay, one more time. One more time. Excellent. Just keep pulling. Okay, we opened. We opened the hatch. Okay, copy. We opened the hatch. Okay, give me this hook, Mike. Stand by one. There is a kit here. You have the kit in your way.
This is Mission Control Houston, the crew reporting that the hatches are open. We're standing by to hear from Russian flight controllers the official start time.
We give a go for sublimate activation. How do you read? You are loud and clear. Michael, activate the sublimate, otherwise it will be hot right now. Is the sublimator activated? I can't see it right now. Yes, it is in the lowest position now. I mean, the handle is.
This is Mission Control Houston, the Russian Mission Control Center, confirming that the hatch to the Piers docking compartment was opened at 1:58 a.m. Central Time, beginning tonight's spacewalk for the Expedition 9 crew members.
The view is good. We have moved, I have moved to the black handrails, and Michael is closing. Very good. And be careful next to STK. Actually, it's right above us. I'm next to the foot restraint, says Michael.
Так, вот он поручень 2614 и 2612.
And there are handrails here, 2614 and 2612.
На 2614 мы оставляем вас, а на 26...
So we're keeping
Володя, мы готовы?
WAS at 2414 and 2412 is for KPU, and we are ready to split the bundle.
Сейчас я устал, работаю с
We'll give you a go for that.
Как раз мы его испытаем здесь.
And let me work with the adapter somewhat. It will be a good test for it.
Так, мы их разделяем, you need to divide key.
So we are splitting the bundle at this time.
Вот сюда. Камера есть, мне. Отлично.
I
Сейчас я перестыкую вас.
have the camera here, and let me move a bit away.
Гена, как состояние поручней?
Gennady, what about
The
the
Expedition 9 crew
handrail?
members will make their way to the end of the Zvezda service module. The first task will be to remove an SKK, or a removable cassette container.
And we have the inhibit.
Ага.
It looks like
Да. Так, все, у нас вас зафиксировано.
there were no burns at all.
Astronaut Mike Fink will take pictures of that cassette container
Is hooked up to
before Padalka removes it.
2614. Okay, you can start moving now, Gennady. Is the path clear? It's been attached. Vladimir, I copy that and try to toggle it. I've done that, and it's all fine. And securing the hook. Right, I have secured it with the hook as well. Now, remove the cover. And shall we take the cover with us? Yes, the soft cover you can take with you to be discarded later. Copy. Removed it now. And opened it, and it is deployed. Make sure you take a picture of the deployed cassette. Copy. And the same thing is happening with number 3, says Michael. Copy. Starting taking pictures. We have 2 images. And Gennady, and if it is convenient, take pictures of LSV-3 as well. I'm handing over the camera to Michael. And the cassette is deployed in the same way as the old one was deployed, right? Exactly.
Подход крышки не очень хороший. Все-таки ее затыгали. Ленточка ушла, да? Ленточка широкая, шире 10 раз, чем захвату. Ну да, мы когда планировали снимать с крышками, сначала провести карабинскую ленточку, потом за кольцо на ручке, а сама...
And the hook should go around the handrail and then be hooked to the handle of the unit. And actually the ribbon is torn off the cap. Now it got separated. It was glued on and now it has been separated, but is it easily removable? Yes, it is. What would you suggest? You can pass it to Michael and use the cap from LSV6. Okay, I can try to install it on LSV5. This will take a bit of time. Okay, I installed it, and I'm not sure how secure it is. Just make sure the loose parts go to the bag.
This is Mission Control Houston with live views from the International Space Station of the Expedition 9 crew as they're working at the aft end of the Zvezda service module. You can see just a little bit of movement at the top edge of the end of the service module in the center of the screen.
Gennady, I'm moving towards you. Okay, Michael.
This view is being provided by a camera on the elbow of the Canadarm2, or robotic arm. The robotics officer here in Mission Control will work to train that camera a little better on the crew members back there working on the service module.
It can open, actually. What do you mean? I mean that the cap is attached only by Velcro. It's the one from number 5. Yes, it is in place. I just want to make sure it is secure. And also there is no end for red on LSV3. Okay, on 5 it is in place. On 3 it is in place, but here it has been torn off. Shall I take a picture of it? Yes, this will be good. Michael, can you see it? Can you take a picture? I think so. What can we do here? Only if you use the large hook with the structure. Well, possibly. Yes, I believe we can use the large hook here. How about, it's on a stringer. Yes, I'll try to pull it inside.
This is Mission Control Houston with a better close-up view of tonight's spacewalkers as they're working on the outside of the Zvezda service module. Astronaut Mike Fink is on the right side of the screen. He is wearing the Orlan spacesuit with the blue stripes. And cosmonaut Gennady Padalka is wearing the suit with the red stripes. The crew is now working in the area of the laser reflectors that are part of the rendezvous and docking equipment for the automated transfer vehicle, which will launch to the space station next year. The crew has already completed the first task successfully of swapping out an SKK, or a replaceable cassette container, materials exposure experiment.
The cap is not secured enough. Я сейчас буду сразу укладывать в карман. Да, конечно. Очень хорошо. Держится чуть-чуть. So the cap is barely attached. Так, снимаю я его сразу в карман. Removing it and putting it in the pocket. Принято. Copy. Сейчас Кэтлон находится в Fortune 2613. Michael. And Michael using handrail 2631, perhaps? It was not clear. What? Whether it worked. And it's right at the very bottom of the pocket. Copy, great. Let me try to pull it deeper. Давление у меня 39, и баллон это 380. My suit pressure is 039 and bottle pressure 380. Michael, be careful inside there. All right. Так, идем дальше. Translating further. Now we'll work with Chromka. Michael will be taking pictures. Yes, I can see Chromka, says Michael. And I can see handrail 2711. Says Gennady, 2713 at this time. Вижу, сверху, ага. Сейчас, секундочку. Так, я фотографирую.
Okay, you may take a picture now. Copy. Again, what is the pressure?
This is Mission Control Houston. Members now moving on to another task, and we'll come back to working on the ATV reflectors momentarily. They've removed one reflector and stowed it on a tool carrier to bring it back inside the space station.
Okay, I'm going to take the picture. Take a picture.
We're now moving on to photograph the Chromka experiment and remove it. It is an experiment that is fixed near thrusters on the service module to study the contamination from the thrusters. Again, those thrusters have been inhibited for tonight's spacewalk as the crew members are working around the area of the service module aft end, and the attitude of the station is being controlled by the non-propulsive U.S. system, the control moment gyroscopes.
Copy. You may take a picture now, Michael.
The crew is again taking photos of this Chromka number 2. They will remove it and stow it also on the tool carrier for bringing it back inside the station.
Do you think it's okay for him
install
to move
Chromka number 3 on a different handrail location.
From a side? You will not see the face part of it. Okay, you will be there in the picture, together with it. It's all right. Well, you know, the thruster is here. Copy. I got it. Took the picture. Excellent. Okay, I'll use the red tether now. Give me the bag, please. First give me your red tether, and I will be installing the WAS antenna. Here is the bag. There is no red on it. Okay, copy. I understand. Here is, give me your red tether. And use the wing nut wrench to screw it in.
The crew members are continually referring to a RET tether. That's a retractable tether that is used usually with U.S. spacesuits. It's a U.S. tool, but has been accommodating during this Russian spacewalk and Russian spacesuits.
Do I have to
We're using the tether to attach all the equipment that they will be bringing back inside with them at the end of the spacewalk.
Small hook and it doesn't fit. You're right. Maybe you will use the cord. I have a wire tab. Maybe I will attach it to the handrail. Yes, that's a good idea. Good idea. I'll do that now. It will be easier. Got it. And now I can use the small red hook with no problem. Copy. Okay, Misha, give me your red tether. Got it. Just a second, Mike. I will help you with I will attach my red to it. Not, in order not to hand it over to me. Okay, I'm using my red tether. And now, Michael, use the wing nut wrench.
This is Mission Control Houston as the International Space Station passes over the side of the Earth experiencing nighttime. The Russian Mission Control encouraging the crew members to take a break in their tasks so far. The spacewalk began at 1:58 a.m. Central Time this morning, now 1 hour and 12 minutes into the spacewalk. Crew members moved quickly to the aft end of the Zvezda service module, where most of their work sites are for tonight's spacewalk. First task was to remove and replace an SKK, or replaceable cassette container. It is a materials exposure experiment. Cosmonaut Gennady Padalka folded up the experiment to protect the materials that have been exposed to the vacuum of space and installed a new experiment. The old one was placed onto a tool carrier by astronaut Mike Fink and will be brought inside with them when they end the spacewalk. Tonight's spacewalk was expected to last just under 6 hours at 5 hours and 46 minutes. As you heard, the Russian Control Center stated that they're a little ahead on the timeline at this point. After completing the work with the SKK, they moved on to the work site of the ATV, or Automated Transfer Vehicle laser reflectors. Did a little bit of work with those, removing one reflector. They have 6 to remove during the spacewalk, and install 3 upgraded units and one 3-dimensional upgraded unit to replace all 6 of those. After removing that one reflector, they moved over to the side of the service module where the Krumka 2 experiment is located. That is a witness plate that is collecting contamination from thruster firings. That too was closed and stowed on the toolkit and will be brought back inside so that it can be brought back down to Earth to be examined. The next task for the crew members is to install the WAS 1 and 2 antenna assemblies. That is the first antenna assembly to be installed for the automated transfer vehicle. The ATV, as it is called, is the first one is scheduled to launch to the space station in the fall of 2005.
Так, Володя, отверстие номер 2, я его вижу. Промаркировано, правда, едва заметно. Принял, да? Принято. Принято. Еще на кронштейне маркировка есть. Еще на кронштейне маркировка есть.
Be no need. Hopefully there will be no need to do that.
Я вот, так сказать, особо...
You know, I'm not putting much effort.
Я затянул. Принял, да?
Therefore,
Принято. Затянул.
I will consider it has been tightened. Okay, copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. Cosmonaut Gennady Padalka currently working on installing the WAS 1 and 2 antenna assemblies for the automated transfer vehicle.
Стоит надежно.
Here's a picture of that hardware that he's working with right now. We do expect to have video back of the crew's activities outside the space station in about 10 minutes from now.
А потом замок Кириевича. Привет, Сережа.
And then the Kiryevichev lock. Hi, Sergey.
У нас не слышат, нет?
Is Sergey there?
Его нет, да?
He's not in. Okay.
Передадим, он только что был, ушел.
He was here. He stepped out.
Так, я поставил.
Okay, I have installed the interlocking device.
Блокиратор стоит.
Copy. The interlocking device has been installed. Look around. Yeah, do please.
Astronaut Mike Fink has completed installing the Krumka 3 experiment, a witness plate around the thrusters of the Zvezda service module. Gennady Padalka also demated a connector for a failed camera on the exterior of the station that will be replaced in a future spacewalk. Now the crew members can move on to the next task, which is getting back to replacing the automated transfer vehicle laser reflectors.
Do we start with LSV-2? Either 1 or 2? Okay, I will start with LSV-1. I'm close to it. Copy. Good. Okay, Misha. I'm waiting for LSV-1. Okay, I need to be close to you. That's affirmative. Translate closer here. I'm translating. But there's no difference for me which, because they are marked as 6, 7, 8, but we call them 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter which one to install here. Yeah, that's affirmative. Copy. Understood. You know, I'm translating. Take your time, Misha. We have time.
Once the crew members are instructed, they can move back towards the aft end of the Zvezda service module. They are about halfway done with their work on the automated transfer vehicle laser reflectors. They've removed and replaced 3 of them. They have 6 total to remove tonight. They were installing 3 upgraded laser reflectors and then installing a 4th 3-dimensional videometer to replace the additional 3 reflectors they're removing. They also have to finish installing a cable for the WAS-1 and 2 antennas for the automated transfer vehicle. It is basically installed but needs to be mated. And also the crew will have to stop back by the SKK materials experiment, which was installed first thing during the spacewalk. They will take some photos and open up that cassette container so its materials can be exposed to the vacuum of space.
Гена, Майкл, как
Геннадий, Michael, how are you doing?
Гена, Майкл, как самочувствие? Нормально.
All right.
Отлично.
Perfect.
Не замерзаете?
Not getting cold?
Не замерзаете?
No.
039 290.
39.
Немножко прохладно. У Майка как параметры?
And for Michael? Loss of calm.
This is Mission Control Houston. The communications and tracking officer here in the flight control room is now working on reactivating the prime communications string for S-band communications. It was determined that during the switching off of some of the equipment earlier to preserve power for critical systems, that the prime string of the S-band communications was also shut off inadvertently. But we switched to the redundant string through Russian ground site communication systems. And now with S-band reacquired through the redundant string, we can switch back to the primary string. This is Mission Control Houston, now 2 hours and 53 minutes into tonight's spacewalk, the third spacewalk for the Expedition 9 crew members. And they're standing by at the forward end of the Zvezda service module, awaiting a go to return to the work site at the aft end of the service module. The thrusters are completed firing to realign the space station's attitude, but attitude control is now in the process of being handed back over to the control moment gyroscopes on the U.S. system, and until that is done, the crew has to stay a safe distance away from the thrusters.
Yes. You sound well now.
Spacewalk started at 1:58 a.m. Central Time this morning when the crew stepped outside of the Piers docking compartment and airlock.
We are continuing. Unfortunately, we are still waiting. We have not switched to gyrodynes yet. Copy.
The crew members worked ahead of the timeline for the beginning of tonight's spacewalk.
Maybe 10 to 15 minutes wait time.
Ребят, 3 минуты прошло у нас. Можно еще раз посмотреть.
You have waited for 3 minutes. You can look around and close the hatch. Okay, very good. I am hooking on, and Michael, check the seals again. Yes, it looks good. Everything is clean.
Секундочку.
Copy. Just a second.
Все, отстыковал. Закрываем.
Done. Hooked up. Closing now.
Нитка, веревка от кольца.
And
Посмотри. Все нормально, я ничего не...
check the tether from the ring.
Заворачивай.
Okay, nothing is interfering.
Размещай.
Now rotate the handle.
Прикрыли. Принято.
We have
Визуально все нормально.
closed but not locked the hatch yet. Visually, there is no interference, and we are proceeding. Shutting the hatch.
Да-да. Помогу, помогу. Эх, нет. Еще раз.
Okay, again.
Есть, да?
Got it, right?
Затрезка.
Yes, I think.
Все, наехали ролики.
The rollers are in place.
Готовы работать.
Снять.
And the key is to be removed right after closing the hatch. Exactly.
Фрагменты.
Okay, cue card.
После выхода.
This is Mission Control Houston, the crew reporting that the hatch is closed. We're standing by for official word from the Russian Control Center on the phased elapsed time of tonight's spacewalk.
Так, крышка закрыта. Время закрытия вы зафиксировали. Выполняем на топ?
Да, фрагмент 8.2.
Yes, this will be 8 decimal.
Фрагмент 8.2.
Part 8.
Сейчас я ближе размещу.
Let's get a bit closer.
Прикреплю БД прищепкой.
I will clamp the ladder on.
Так, пульт включен, КСД.
Okay, checking KSD. KSD is closed.
Закрыто.
And KSD this is closed.
КВД, ПХО.
KVD PHO SU is enabled. KVD PHO SU is enabled. Yes.
КВД, ПХО
KVD PHO S2 is commanding to open. Did you copy? Yes, issued that command, got LED.
Есть. Открылся.
Open.
Пошел рост давления.
And
Принято.
repress started. 15. 30.
25.
No, 15, 25. 30 now.
40.
40.
50 прошли.
50 passed.
Принято.
Copy.
Принято.
This is Mission Control Houston. The Expedition 9 crew now back inside the Piers docking compartment with official confirmation that the hatch was closed at 6:28 a.m. Central Time, then making tonight's spacewalk 4 hours and 30 minutes long. This was the third spacewalk for the Expedition 9 crew members. The 55th spacewalk in support of space station assembly and maintenance, the 30th conducted from the space station itself, and the 12th from the Russian Piers docking compartment and airlock.
100 millimeters mercury.
Satz im All. 2 Astronauten der internationalen Raumstation ISS haben mit Arbeiten an der Außenwand begonnen. Sie installieren eine Antenne und mehrere Laserreflektoren. Damit wird die Ankunft des ersten Raumtransporters der Europäischen Weltraumorganisation ESA in einem Jahr vorbereitet.
Die Astronauten der internationalen Raumstation ISS haben ihre Station für einen Außeneinsatz verlassen. Der Russe Gennady Padalka und der Amerikaner Mike Fink wollen die Ankunft eines ersten Raumtransporters der Europäischen Weltraumorganisation ESA im nächsten Jahr vorbereiten. Der Weltraumspaziergang soll rund 6 Stunden dauern.
Wie die russische Kontrollstation mitteilte, musste die Besatzung den Ausstieg nach einer Unterbrechung der Funkverbindung abkürzen. Außerdem habe sich die Station kurzzeitig von ihrer normalen Position entfernt. Die ISS-Besatzung sollte Vorbereitungen für die Ankunft einer europäischen Versorgungsfähre treffen.
Die Raumsonde Messenger hat eine wahrlich lange Reise vor sich. Sie ist die erste seit 30 Jahren, die den zweitkleinsten Planeten unseres Sonnensystems ansteuert. Die Messenger wurde jetzt erfolgreich ins All geschossen. Und da ist es überhaupt ziemlich voll gewesen, denn auch die 2 Astronauten der internationalen Raumstation ISS waren unterwegs im All.
Ein Raumspaziergang ist immer gefährlich. Die Astronauten verlassen die schützende Station, schweben im All, sind nur durch eine Hightech-Nabelschnur mit dem Mutterschiff verbunden. Die gute Nachricht, es hat keine Probleme gegeben. Wie beim letzten Mal, als die Vorgänger ihren Ausflug abbrechen mussten, weil das Kühlsystem eines Raumanzuges versagte. Die Astronauten Gennady Padalka und Mike Finke haben ein volles Programm. Sie sollen unter anderem die Ankunft des ersten europäischen Raumtransporters Jules Verne vorbereiten. Der ESA-Transporter wird zwar erst im kommenden Jahr erwartet, doch die Vorbereitungen brauchen Zeit. Die Astronauten installieren eine Antenne für den Funkkontakt. Insgesamt 6 Stunden sind eingeplant für alle Arbeiten. Padalka und Finke erledigen das mal eben in 4 Stunden. Sie seien flink wie die Feuerwehr, heißt es zufrieden in der Flugleitzentrale bei Moskau. Zufrieden ist auch die NASA, denn endlich ist die Raumsonde Messenger auf dem Weg zum Merkur. Die Delta-Trägerrakete startete um 8:16 Uhr unserer Zeit in Cape Canaveral in Florida. Am Montag musste der Start verschoben werden. Das Wetter spielt nicht mit. Doch jetzt ist Messenger unterwegs, ein historischer Moment, denn seit 30 Jahren hat die NASA keinen Boten zum sonnennächsten Planeten entsandt. 8 Milliarden Kilometer in 7 Jahren. 2011 soll Messenger in eine Umlaufbahn um den Merkur einschwenken und neue Informationen zur Erde liefern. Sie sollen den Forschern Aufschluss geben über geologische Geschichte, Magnetfeld und mögliche Eisvorkommen an den Polen des kleinsten Planeten im Sonnensystem.
An der amerikanischen Ostküste gilt Hurrikanwarnung. Der Wirbelsturm namens Alex, der erste dieser Hurrikansaison, hatte sich über dem Atlantik zusammengebraut und ist nur noch wenige Kilometer entfernt. Begleitet von starkem Regen nähert sich Alex immer weiter der Küste des Bundesstaates North Carolina. Der Hurrikan erreicht Windgeschwindigkeiten von mehr als 150 Kilometern pro Stunde. Die Bevölkerung wurde aufgefordert, sich in Sicherheit zu bringen.
Seit 1886 begrüßte die New Yorker Freiheitsstatue all jene Einwanderer, die auf dem Seeweg nach Amerika kamen. Oft nur mit einer Pappschachtel in der Hand, aber voller Hoffnung auf ein besseres Leben. Gib mir deine Müden, deine Armen, deine niedergedrückten Massen, so steht es auf der Inschrift. Und die Massen kamen und sie kommen auch heute noch als Touristenströme. Dass ausgerechnet dieses berühmteste Symbol der Freiheit nach dem 11. September für Besucher geschlossen wurde, aus Angst vor Anschlägen, war im Krieg der Symbole eine Niederlage. Heute wurde die Freiheitsstatue wieder geöffnet, wenigstens teilweise. Aus New York, Uwe Kröger.
Freiheit in Zeiten des Terrorismus. New Yorks Statue of Liberty ist heute selbst zum Objekt verschärfter Sicherheit geworden. Sehr demonstrativ wird hier mit den Muskeln gespielt, nicht zuletzt als Reaktion auf die neuen Geheimdiensterkenntnisse. Natürlich kann die Freiheitsstatue auch selbst ein Terrorziel sein angesichts dessen, wofür sie steht. Sie ist schließlich Symbol der Freiheit und für viele verkörpert sie einfach Amerika. 3 Jahre nach dem Anschlag auf die Zwillingstürme, Lady Liberty öffnet wieder ihre Pforten. Die feiern, seit langem geplant, nicht eigens eine Trotzinszenierung gegen den Terror. Trotzdem, keinen besseren Tag kann sich New Yorks Bürgermeister vorstellen, um der Welt zu signalisieren, dieses ist das starke Amerika und dieses ist die Freiheit, die wir meinen. 15 Minuten dauert die Bootsfahrt von der Freiheitsstatue nach Manhattan, den Ort, auf den sich mehrere Terrorwarnungen konzentrieren. Symbolträchtige Finanzinstitutionen sollen auf den Anschlagslisten der Al-Qaida weit oben stehen, so jedenfalls Geheimdiensterkenntnisse nach den jüngsten Festnahmen in Pakistan. Allerdings, sie sollen sich auf Vorgänge vor rund 3 Jahren beziehen. Jetzt hochgespielt als Angstkarte im Wahlkampf, Washington dementiert. Was veröffentlicht wurde, deutet darauf hin, dass die Vorgänge selbst 2 bis 4 Jahre zurückliegen. Unsere Geheimdienste bemühen sich jetzt nach Kräften, diese Erkenntnisse mit ihren Ermittlungen über tatsächlich aktuelle Vorgänge abzugleichen. Auch seit dem 11. September 2001 durften Touristen die Grüne Dame auf ihrer Insel vor Manhattan besuchen. Eröffnet indes wurde heute das Museum im Podest des Denkmals. Tribut an die untadelige Geschichte der Lady. Ein Geschenk der Franzosen war sie, für die Freiheit schon immer Frauengestalt hatte. Und so entstand sie nicht zuletzt als technisches Wunderwerk, konstruiert von dem Mann, der auch den Eiffelturm in Paris baute. Innen hohl, doch außen voller Symbolkraft, Lady Liberty. Millionen hatten Tränen in den Augen bei der Ankunft. Die Statue of Liberty, Verheißung der neuen Welt. 120 Jahre später ist Amerika manchmal zurückhaltender mit seinen Willkommenswünschen. Franco Milano, 93 Jahre heute, floh 1940 vor den Faschisten und Nazis aus Italien nach Amerika. Sein amerikanischer Traum ging in Erfüllung. Es war ein sehr emotionaler Augenblick, als wir vor Boot die Freiheitsstatue erblickten, über die wir so viel gehört hatten. Endlich waren wir im Land der Freiheit angekommen. New York, die Stadt des vermeintlich unaufhaltsamen Aufstiegs, bis sie ins Mark getroffen wurde. Wo die Zwillingstürme zusammenstürzen, wird der Freedom Tower entstehen, dessen schlanke Spitze sozusagen das optische Echo des hochgereckten Arms der Freiheitsstatue bilden soll. Korrespondierende Symbole. Die Statue of Liberty wird in den nächsten Wochen auf ein Manhattan blicken, das vor lauter Sicherheit in wahre Atemnot kommen könnte, denn Ende August rücken die Republikaner zum Wahlparteitag an.
This is Hurricane Alex. What is going on with that? It's moving away. As you see here in the forecast path, it's going to take it to the open ocean. Right now, gusting at 138 kilometers per hour. We had in North Carolina and Virginia intense flooding associated with this. Well, look at the right lower corner of this screen. You see here a tropical depression that is going right now through the Lesser Antilles, and it's going to go and then intensify actually into the Hispaniola island here, the island that share Haiti and the Dominican Republic. Used to these systems, well, this is the time of the year, so they are going to be facing another situation like that. We'll keep you posted. Japan also is seeing the impact of a tropical depression. Actually, Asia is more active in terms of tropical weather than the Caribbean or North America. We have now another one here that is turning towards the Sea of Japan and then into Hokkaido, bringing the rains.
This video was also captured from outside the International Space Station this morning, August 12th, about 8 a.m. Central Time. This video is of the tropical storm Bonnie, which is expected to make landfall tonight on the Florida Panhandle. It's captured as the International Space Station orbits at an average altitude of 230 statute miles above the Gulf of Mexico. The communications and tracking officer here in Mission Control Houston used a camera on the outside of the laboratory module of the space station to capture this video. The crew members on board the International Space Station, the Expedition 9 crew, have also been able to capture still photos of these storms as they developed in the Gulf of Mexico. This video was captured this morning about 6:25 a.m. Central Time today, August 12th, of Hurricane Charlie as it continues to strengthen south of Cuba on a course that could make landfall around the Tampa Bay area late tomorrow or Saturday. This view was captured from a video camera on the exterior of the International Space Station as it orbits about 230 statute miles above the Earth.
Tropischen Stürmen dort zu tun. Eines ist bereits ein Hurricane, Hurricane Charlie. Der wird über Kuba weiter Richtung Florida ziehen, in den frühen Morgenstunden Amerikas, dann die Keys erreichen. Und der zweite, das ist ein tropischer Sturm, aber auch der wird heute noch am Abend Florida erreichen. So viel dazu. Ich wünsche Ihnen jetzt noch einen angenehmen Abend.
Hurricane Charlie has been clobbering the Caribbean. More than 1,000 tourists were evacuated from an island off Cuba's southeast coast ahead of that storm. And earlier, Charlie dumped heavy rains on Jamaica, where one man died as he tried to save 6 people from rising floodwaters. Well, with the latest now on those storms, let's cross to the International Weather Centre for CNN and Femi OK. Femi.
Hello there, Becca. We're not out of the woods yet. We still have storms out there towards the west, also out towards the east. Let's start in the east where the most deadliest of the tropical weather is, and just take a closer look at our typhoon. Still a typhoon, still typhoon strength. It will begin to break down now, as it has already begun to do so over land, but we're now really looking at wind and rain as a major problem. Let me just rewind just slightly and push in towards that typhoon. You can see how powerful it is, and that's the rain that killed at least 20 people. Still getting the final tally on that. As we head across towards the United States, also keeping an eye on Hurricane Charlie as it makes its way through that western side of Cuba. As Becky just told you, a number of evacuations there, heading towards the southern section of Florida, then pushing up towards the Carolinas. This hurricane has so much power, they believe it may well end up all the way north into New England. Bonnie now, we call it a rain event. It's already made landfall, i.e. the middle of that storm is now over land. An awful lot of rain heading through that northern section of Florida and southern part of Georgia. And that just about wraps up that tropical weather for you. But you can see as we look at the precipitation forecast, i.e. where will the rain be next, from these areas of orange here and here, you can see how heavy that rainfall will be. Tremendous amounts of rain all the way from Florida right the way up through that eastern seaboard of the US. You head further back into central areas, looking pretty dry by comparison.
Officials are ordering residents in several areas to evacuate before Hurricane Charlie hits shore. Winds are expected to top some 180 kilometers an hour. Well, Ed Lavandera is in Florida's Clearwater Beach, and he joins us from there. Ed.
Hello. Well, the Hurricane Charlie currently south of Cuba now, but we're anticipating that landfall will be made here in the Tampa, Florida area sometime tomorrow afternoon. We're here on Clearwater Beach, Florida, which is a popular tourist spot for folks from around the world as they've come here throughout the day. This beach was mostly full earlier today, but as you can see, the high tide and the high surf and the winds that have picked up considerably throughout the day have moved a lot of people off the beach here this afternoon. The evacuation orders for people to get away from the coastal regions and also low-lying areas has become a concern, and we've seen warnings and evacuation orders go out throughout the state, starting in the farthest southern point of the state, Key West, where evacuation orders were issued to everyone who is a non-resident of the area to leave the area. And we've also seen that trend kind of move up along the western shore of the United States, or of the state of Florida. We also understand that there have been a lot of people around this area boarding up windows and preparing for the high winds that are expected to come with Hurricane Charlie. And as you might imagine, if you have plans to travel here to the Florida area by airplane, here in the next day or so, that will be something you might want to closely monitor because we anticipate that this storm will not only have a serious effect on travel arrangements throughout the state, not just in the Tampa area, but there's a pretty wide-ranging storm that will also cut into the southeastern half of the United States and cause problems for several days to come. Back to you.
Ed Lavandera in Clearwater Beach, Florida. We thank you. Let's get a look at the global weather picture and find out what's going on with these storms and what the prospects for them are. Mary Ramos is at the CNN International Weather Center with the latest forecast. It's been a busy 24 hours for you guys, Mary.
It's been very busy. We had 4 tropical cyclones yesterday. 2, these are the 2 right here in the Caribbean, and I want to show them to you. Bonnie, first of all, that has moved just to the north of where Ed was talking to us right now. That is now just an area of low pressure, but it is bringing some very heavy rain along parts of Georgia and along the Carolinas as well. Some of these actually under a tornado warning earlier today because of the possibility of tornadoes. Now, Charlie, which is what Ed was talking to us about, there is this huge hurricane that you see here. Winds are in excess of 160 kilometers per hour, and more strengthening is expected as it continues to move along the western tip of Cuba. The Cayman Islands have been affected, also Jamaica, which is now in the clear, by the way. Some very heavy rain and strong gusty winds, of course, hurricane-force winds moving now into parts of the Florida Keys. Now, a very dangerous situation there in the Florida Keys is that chain of islands at the tip of southern Florida. Elevation there is only about half a meter at its highest point, and they're expecting a storm surge, a wall of water that is to come with this hurricane that could be in excess of 4 meters. So a very serious situation there. A mandatory evacuation in this chain of islands here. Western parts of Cuba have also been under a hurricane warning for the last 24 hours or so. Ed talking to us from this area right in here where Hurricane Charlie, by then, Becky, could actually be a Category 3 storm. That is a major storm. What that means is that it could have winds in excess of 190 kilometers per hour. A very powerful storm system dumping heavy rain, disrupting conditions all across Florida and also into the rest of the southeastern states. The other storm you talked about it just a little while ago was this typhoon, this one moving into China. You can clearly see, of course, the situation with this one here. Winds 130 kilometers per hour as we speak. Heavy rain into Taiwan, Shanghai, and also points to the south, even some heavy rain as far south as Hong Kong. Let's go back to you guys now in London.
That's an extremely busy satellite picture from Mary Ramos. We thank you. Let's get a
Staat Florida bereiten sich die Menschen auf den heranziehenden Hurricane Charlie vor. Rund 1 Million Bewohner der Küstenregionen sind aufgerufen, sich in Sicherheit zu bringen. Meteorologen rechnen mit dem schlimmsten Wirbelsturm seit 50 Jahren. Die Behörden haben vorsorglich Katastrophenalarm ausgerufen. Nationalgarde und Rettungskräfte sind in Alarmbereitschaft.
Overnight, the storm uprooted trees and tore away rooftops in western Cuba, bearing winds of almost 200 kilometers per hour. In Havana, power had been cut off ahead of time to prevent even greater damage. Charlie is right now about 152 kilometers southwest of Fort Myers, that's in Florida in the U.S. But further south in Key West, the storm's high winds are already being felt. About 2 million residents and tourists are being warned to move inland from along the state's Gulf Coast. The storm is expected to hit the city of Tampa head-on.
This is a great threat to the Tampa Bay area. We've never had this kind of a direct a storm coming directly towards Tampa Bay, and one of our greatest concerns is the storm surge. The way that the storm appears that it may hit the Tampa Bay area could really be troublesome for us in terms of a storm surge that could be as high as 14 feet.
Of course, throughout the week here on CNN, we've been keeping an eye on exactly what Charlie has been doing. Femi Oke tracking it in more detail for us. She's at the Weather Center. Femi?
Atlantic hurricanes, thank you very much, Tumi, are categorized from 1 to 5. 1 is low intensity, so it has less damaging power, but still a lot of flooding rains. 5 is the biggest hurricane that you can get. We are now seeing Hurricane Charlie only just making up into Category 3, which means it's getting more powerful by the minute. This is the sort of damage that a Category 3 hurricane can do. Damage to homes, structural damage, outside walls can fall around. You're going to see that classic sign of trees being blown around as well. So this is the worst case scenario really for an area like Tampa, which has a lot of buildings and a lot of people. Many thousands of them have been evacuated. I want to take you up in towards Tampa region here. This is where Hurricane Category 3 is due to head as far as our track is concerned. I want to show you that because the mayor who you just heard for Tampa Bay area was talking about storm surge. Storm surge is what happens when the seawater gets drawn up and then pushed in with the storm. So it's expecting that storm surge, basically incredible amounts of flooding to happen into this area. I wanted to explain what storm surge was before I show you this video. This video was made by the Federal Meteorological Bureau in the US. This is the Tampa Bay area. This is how flooded it will be if it was Category 1. Then it gets up to Category 2 and Category 3. Then you can see how severe it is. So all of that residential area, by the time you get to Category 3, could well be underneath water. We'll have to watch that space and see how things turn out. Of course, head back here towards the World Weather Center. I want to show you that track. I will keep you up to date with it. Heading right the way into that Tampa area, then up into northern Florida. Expect to see an incredible amount of rain. Very, very dangerous situation.
In Florida, Hurricane Charlie rast heran. Kuba hat hinter sich gelassen, dabei aber nichts von seiner Gewalt eingebüßt. Entlang der Westküste Floridas bis in den Ballungsraum um Tampa haben die Menschen in Massen die Flucht ergriffen. Charlie könnte einer der schwersten Wirbelstürme seit Jahrzehnten werden und bis zu 5 Meter hohe Wellen an Land drücken.
Charlie kommt. Key West, die äußerste Insel der Florida Keys in diesen Minuten. Bis vorgestern noch das karibische Badeparadies der USA. Jetzt halten sich hier nur noch Leichtsinnige im Freien auf. Dabei ist das hier noch gar nichts, denn der Hurricane geht knapp an den Florida Keys vorbei. Die Einwohner haben noch mal Glück gehabt. In den frühen Morgenstunden fegte Charlie über Kuba hinweg. Noch relativ schwach, die Schäden hielten sich in Grenzen. Präsident Fidel Castro ließ es sich trotzdem nicht nehmen, seinen Landsleuten im Staatsfernsehen beizustehen. Die Menschen an der Westküste Floridas rund um Tampa hingegen müssen mit dem Schlimmsten rechnen. Denn Charlie wird immer stärker. Dort, wo er am Nachmittag an Land gehen soll, werden meterhohe Flutwellen erwartet. Dieser Hurricane ist sehr stark. Wir erwarten Windgeschwindigkeiten von bis zu 200 Stundenkilometern. Die Situation ist sehr gefährlich. Die Flughäfen entlang der Westküste Floridas sind inzwischen geschlossen. Auch zahlreiche Krankenhäuser wurden geräumt. Und die Polizei ist immer noch dabei, ganze Ortschaften zu evakuieren. Die Innenstadt von Tampa. Diesmal wird's ernst. Jeder, der aufgefordert wird zu gehen, sollte das tun. Das Leben ist doch wichtiger als ein Haus. So wie Sie denken viele. Nach neuesten Schätzungen sind fast 1,5 Millionen Menschen auf der Flucht vor Charlie.
Ein Blick auf Charlie, den Hurrikan. Der zieht mit 30 Kilometern pro Stunde nach Norden und wird die Westküste Floridas etwa bei Tampa erreichen. Die höchsten Windgeschwindigkeiten, die treten hier in einem kleinen Kreis um das Zentrum herum auf, zwischen 170 und über 200 Kilometern pro Stunde. Und es fällt enormer Regen. Und zwar die heftigsten Regenfälle hier in diesen Bändern, die von gelb bis rot eingefärbt sind. Wie eine riesige Pumpe. Am Boden wird Luft angesaugt, spiralförmig in 16, 18 Kilometern Höhe getrieben und dann dort herausgeschleudert. Und dabei werden riesige Mengen an Wasser umgesetzt. Sie sehen, das gesamte Grüne, das sind schon Regenmengen, wie sie bei uns nur in Ausnahmefällen auftreten. Und das Gelb bis Rot sowieso ganz intensive Regenfälle. Und an einem einzigen Tag wird hier so viel Energie umgesetzt, die ausreichen würde, die gesamte Erde ein Jahr lang mit elektrischer Energie zu versorgen.
Aren't linear thinkers. They don't act linearly. They are fierce weather systems that don't go exactly where a computer model will suggest that they go, which is why this was a statewide emergency and why throughout the state there's been a coordinated effort, and every community has been involved and focused on this long before today.
Do you know what the highest wind that was as it came ashore?
My name is Ben Nelson, state meteorologist with the Florida Division of Emergency Management. At approximately 3:45 p.m., the eye of Hurricane Charlie came ashore very close to Sanibel Island and then into Charlotte Harbor as a 145 mile per hour maximum sustained wind, Category 4 hurricane. We have not received any concrete reports on the surface other than a gust to 109 miles per hour at Port Charlotte, but that was before the eye of the storm and the core of the hurricane impacted that area.
You've been listening to a news conference being held by the governor of Florida, Jeb Bush, of course, and we've been hearing about the damage and the winds that have been wreaked by Hurricane Charlie, which has, of course, now slammed into Florida. Emergency services had urged 3 million people to flee areas in its path. It's been upgraded to a Category 4 with winds up to 230 kilometers an hour, although the chap was just suggesting they have been slightly less than that. We'll get back to Florida and to these weather systems as you stick with CNN throughout the following hour.
And Kay was at the eye of the storm.
Hurricane Charlie was more than advertised. With its 145-mile-an-hour winds, it swooped in on the Gulf Coast faster than anyone anticipated. Most of the forecasters had it headed for the Tampa-St. Petersburg area. Most of the forecasters had it wrong. With a slight jog to the northeast, the bullseye was squarely on Charlotte County, and the hurricane found its target. When Charlie smashed into Port Charlotte, it had the full fury of a level 4 hurricane, knocking down trees and power lines and smashing out signs. The wind pulled the roof off this building. At one hotel, guests found themselves in the middle of Mother Nature's wrath, forced to huddle in a hallway for cover. The fierce winds raced through the lobby, blowing out the back windows. The damage in the parking lot was just as bad.
See my black Ford Escape?
Yeah?
The back window is gone. And the white car right next to it is mine, and it was pushed sideways. Phenomenal, huh?
Welcome to Florida, right?
Oh, yes. I moved down here a week ago.
For those living here, Friday the 13th lived up to its billing, and so did the hurricane. But because it moved through so quickly, by nightfall, Charlie was already gone, but no way forgotten.
Levinson reporting.
Bei Windgeschwindigkeiten von mehr als 240 Stundenkilometern fielen im Zentrum des Wirbelsturms Gebäude wie Kartenhäuser zusammen. 2 Menschen starben bei Verkehrsunfällen infolge des Sturms.
Charlie ist da. Mit bis zu 240 Kilometern pro Stunde deckt er Häuserdächer ab. Menschen können sich nicht auf den Füßen halten. Der Hurrikan verwüstet so manche Innenstadt im US-Bundesstaat Florida. Mehr als 2 Millionen Einwohner waren zuvor aufgefordert worden, sich in Sicherheit zu bringen. Doch sollen hunderte Menschen verletzt worden sein. Gefährlich sind vor allem durch die Luft geschleuderte Äste und Teile von Dächern. US-Präsident Bush erklärte die am schwersten betroffenen Regionen zum Katastrophengebiet. Hilfsgelder aus einem Fonds der Regierung würden den Opfern von Charlie zur Verfügung gestellt. Der Hurrikan entwickelte sich über dem Meer, bis er schließlich über die Küsten hereinbrach, zusammen mit einer Sturmflut. Die Meteorologen im Krisenzentrum versuchen, mit ihren Computerprogrammen den weiteren Weg des Hurrikans vorherzusagen. Sie hoffen, dass er sich im Laufe der nächsten Stunden immer mehr abschwächt. Rund 500.000 Menschen waren nach Angaben der Behörden zuletzt ohne Strom. Charlie hat einen Durchmesser von rund 100 Kilometern. Die Zerstörungen, die er anrichtet, sind offensichtlich. Schätzungen gehen davon aus, dass der Schaden bis zu 15 Milliarden Dollar betragen könnte.
Residents along Florida's Gulf Coast count the casualties and assess the damage in the wake of Hurricane Charlie. Don't go away. Massive damage and numerous casualties as it tore across the state Friday. Charlie is the worst hurricane to hit Florida in a dozen years. The storm's eye passed directly over the town of Punta Gorda, which is where we find CNN's John Zarella. He is there with the latest this morning. John, describe for us what you see today.
Well, Jonathan, it's a terrible situation here in Punta Gorda. We talked with the emergency manager a little while ago who told us that almost in tears that he has ordered 60 body bags. He hopes he doesn't have to use that many, but he did. He has police officers standing at trailer park communities. There are a number of fatalities. The wind speed at one of the hospitals, the main hospital here, clocked, he said, in gusts to 173 miles an hour before the anemometer blew off. He says there's unknown numbers of injuries. He says thousands of people are homeless, and he refers this to his Andrew, referring to the catastrophic 1992 hurricane that swept through South Dade County. We are right now at a condominium building in downtown Punta Gorda, and we are basically walking with search and rescue who are going door to door in this condominium building. Its front was blown apart, windows blown in, roofs torn off. They are looking for possible victims. They are looking for people stranded in there. There are a good dozen people in this search and rescue team. This is just one of the many teams going around throughout the areas of Hillsborough, of Punta Gorda, trying to assess who's live, who's missing, who may be injured. We have no idea what they'll find in this building, if anything. Some people saying that they believed that most everybody had evacuated and gotten out, Jonathan. But this is a very, very difficult, stressful situation here, and it's a time-consuming situation as they go door to door, searching building after building to see if there are people trapped inside or if there are fatalities or survivors who need help. Jonathan?
Your line's a little iffy, John, so let me throw two questions to you right away. You say 60 body bags have been ordered in the area. Do they have any concrete number on fatalities? And what is it specifically that they are looking for now? Are they looking for fatalities, or are they hoping to do some rescue here this morning as well?
Well, they do not stress that, do not have a concrete number on fatalities. We did see 2 refrigeration mortuary trucks roll in here. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at them now. They, again, are hoping that they don't need that many, but it's certainly a possibility. They are saying right now that they're looking for both. They're looking for the dead and the injured, and it is just the very beginning stages of what is going to be a massive search and rescue effort in this town throughout the day today, and certainly throughout the weekend and into next week.
All right, we'll be checking in with you later. John Zarella reporting from Ground Zero for Hurricane Charlie, Punta Gorda, Florida. Punta Gorda cleaning up after Hurricane Charlie, but other people in the United States aren't finished with this storm yet. Over to the Weather Center now. Guillermo Arduino joining us for what is bad news for some folks in the upper U.S. eastern coast.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know where? It's raining a lot in Raleigh, North Carolina now, but we have to focus a little bit farther south into Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This is in general what it is. I'm going to show you also a closer up. This is tornado watches in effect, because within a cyclone like this, we have tornadoes too. Lightning, especially in the periphery of the system in the open ocean. That's good news. Myrtle Beach, as I said, in the northern parts of South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina as well. But now it appears that it's going a little bit farther north. When I say that, I refer to the center of the system, but you know, the outer feeder bands are already there. Okay, now gusting at 166 kilometers per hour, and this is what it's going to do. Let's go back a little bit in time. Let's take a look at affiliate coverage on this.
Postal building in Fort Myers, and the roof just peeling straight back.
Photographer out on the scene, and you see this truck actually being blown around on the runway, and the next plane's damaged. The first airport really to feel it today turned, so it's facing into the wind, but it was pretty brutal. You can see a boat in a building right there, and that just does not look right. And a car, it's hard to see if the car
is just coming off of this house right here, shingles getting torn off. And this is part of the reason why folks, emergency managers didn't want you to go out. And Dave McDaniel actually showed us a big piece at the top of an air conditioner. That stuff flies around like shrapnel and easily could damage.
That is what the wind can do. We want to show you one more video. Let's go and see that plane that was actually pushed by the wind and it collapsed over there. So losses, and we're talking about a lot of money. Well, let me show you that there are some other storms here on the map, and we have tropical depression here forming, tropical storm off the coast of Africa. It appears that this low is taking the same path that Charlie did, and then another one in the Philippine Sea over here. Well, that reminds us of what happened actually in China. We had a typhoon making landfall here in parts of China, south of Shanghai. It killed 115 people. Let's take a look at the video. Also, what we had over there is extreme winds and also lots of rain, but now that rain is beneficial in central parts of China. Let's see city-by-city forecasts now.
Hat an der Westküste Floridas möglicherweise zahlreiche Menschenleben gefordert. Ein Behördensprecher erklärte, man vermute eine erhebliche Zahl von Toten in den Trümmern von Wohnmobilen und Häusern. Es wird befürchtet, dass sich vor allem ältere Menschen nicht immer rechtzeitig in Sicherheit bringen konnten. Inzwischen hat sich die Windgeschwindigkeit von Charlie von 240 Kilometer auf 140 Kilometer in der Stunde ab.
Now on the situation with Charlie, let's go to Guillermo Arduino, who's standing by and has been monitoring the direction and the progress of Charlie. Guillermo, what can you tell us about this?
Rosemary, good to see you. It's making landfall again. We had it originally in Florida, then it went into the Atlantic Ocean, and now it's making landfall here in South Carolina and the northern parts. The center of the system then, it's in between Georgetown and Myrtle Beach, and that's where most of the rain is. It will continue to go through land. Of course, it's going to weaken a little bit because it doesn't have the fuel that it needs, that is the humidity and the heat from the warmth from the waters, and it will continue to go all parallel to the coast. Very dangerous system still. Here's another broader look at it. You see that now it left Florida, it left Georgia. The rain that we see in the badly hit areas associated with moisture, that this is dragging, but it's not the system as such. The radar shows you that there's still the chance of tornadoes, and actually most of the activity now is in northeastern parts of South Carolina and into North Carolina. It was raining in Raleigh not so long ago, and also we see now more lightning activity here in South Carolina, in coastal parts of North Carolina, and especially in Florida. But again, it's not associated with the system itself, it's moisture that it's dragging from there. But Cuba was also affected by this on Friday, and we saw devastation there as well. People lost their houses, like this example that we see here on this picture. Now, we have other tropical cyclones now. We're following this tropical storm that is right off the coast of Africa. And this low, there's a tropical depression that appears to follow, according to the forecasts, the same path that Charlie was going through in the last hours. But on the other side of the world, we have a new low in the Philippine Sea, and we still have remnants of that typhoon that went through parts of China, actually in the Zhejiang province here, and it brought a lot of rain, and it's bringing rain into parts where we need it. Let's take a look at the damage actually and the impact of this typhoon that we had here in China. This is on Friday, bringing high winds and also lots of rain, flooding. We have 118 people dead because of this cyclone, over 2,000 people injured. $2 billion estimated the cost of all the damage and the lost money in the area. So the cyclone actually is going to continue to move into parts of China where we need the rain. Beautiful weather, the contrast in this case in Greece, and I was watching the live shot with Mark McKay, beautiful sky, blue sky, sunshine in Greece. That's what we can expect in the next days. The rain is in Russia, Germany getting better, Spain, Portugal, gorgeous, France also nice, and we get a break, a little bit of a break also in Great Britain.
This is very bad. It ranks pretty close up to Andrew, perhaps not quite the level of Hurricane Andrew back in 1992, but darn close. Everywhere you look, there is a sorrowful story. There's a heart-wrenching picture to take. Right here you can see what was a gas station. Nothing left of the gas station, completely demolished. The car surprisingly, still standing up on the blocks there, one of the signs of how capricious hurricanes can be. Now, all morning we had been reporting on a condominium complex that was hit terribly hard. Elderly people here at the Charlevoix condominiums living here. About an hour and a half ago, the search and rescue teams had gone through apartment by apartment, using their sledgehammers and using crowbars to break into these apartments, condominiums, to try and see if anybody was there. In fact, they did find some people, no one injured, but they did find some elderly people walking around in a daze, many of them trying to put the pieces of their home back together, but there's nothing left to put back together. You can see over here the yellow tape on the wall, and then there is a big orange X marked on that wall. That was done by the search and rescue team to mark that it's no longer habitable, condemned to get out. A police cruiser from the town of Punta Gorda pulled up a little while ago. That police cruiser with another group of men going in there themselves, trying to figure out if anybody else is in there. Over here you can see what's left of a strip mall here. The devastation here. This is what we see all over Punta Gorda, this kind of damage, and in some places even greater damage. The hardest hit areas appear to be trailer parks all around this area that dot this area. The people were told to evacuate some 20 hours before the storm hit, but the storm wasn't expected to come right here. Then it took that sharp right turn into the southwest Florida coast, and many of those people caught unawares had no time to get out, didn't get out. The emergency manager here telling me about 2 hours ago that he had ordered 60 body bags. He's hoping he does not need anywhere near that many, but he was erring on the side of caution. And in fact, the mortuary trucks, refrigerated trucks, were brought in here as well this morning as they continue literally a door-to-door search for people, for survivors, for victims, and for bodies. And of course, to add insult to injury now, rain again starting here in Punta Gorda, something that they certainly don't need as the rescue and relief effort starts to get underway. Very difficult to get their arms around this. Emergency manager telling me that this was his Hurricane Andrew, that the damage is catastrophic.
Liebe Zuschauer, herzlich willkommen. Es ist ein Albtraum-Szenario. So beschreiben Katastrophenhelfer das, was Hurricane Charlie in der Nacht in Florida anrichtete. Der Sturm hatte mit voller Wucht die Südwestküste des Landes getroffen. Mindestens 3 Menschen wurden getötet und von Hunderten gibt es kein Lebenszeichen. Marius Neuhaus berichtet.
Charlie war pünktlich. Seit 2 Tagen hatten Wetterforscher ihn vorausgesagt. Seine Wucht war trotzdem unterschätzt worden. Mit Windgeschwindigkeiten von bis zu 230 Stundenkilometern fegte er durch die Straßen, deckte ganze Dächer ab, brachte Häuser zum Einsturz. Etwa 2 Millionen Menschen hatten sich rechtzeitig in Sicherheit gebracht. Einige Hartgesottene kostete Charlie das Leben.
In einer Siedlung, in der sehr leicht gebaute Häuser standen, dass dort Menschen versucht haben, dort zu bleiben, sich haben nicht evakuieren lassen, nicht geflohen sind vor dem Hurricane, und das ist ihnen offenbar zum Verhängnis geworden. Wir wissen noch nicht, wie viele Todesopfer in dieser einen Siedlung zu beklagen sind.
Erst am Morgen wurde dann das gesamte Ausmaß der Zerstörung deutlich. Selbst stabile Häuser aus Steinen und Beton zerriss es. Hier zerlegte Charlie eine ganze Autowerkstatt mit Reifenlager. Gestartet war der Hurrikan in Jamaika, dann fegte er über Kuba hinweg. In Florida wütete er am schlimmsten. US-Präsident Bush rief den Notstand aus. Inzwischen ist der Sturm abgeschwächt nach Norden gewandert. Experten schätzen, dass Charlie 15 Milliarden $ Schaden angerichtet hat. Und es nähern sich bereits 5 neue Hurrikans der Küste.